That's it right there. That's the new clothing line that's going to be hitting the streets in the San Francisco of the East Coast, also known as Philadelphia. Food Philly, because I apparently live rent-free in all Philadelphians' heads, and I like being there. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Carton Show. We've got David Jacoby right there.
Jacoby.
There he is. He's all in on Philly. We've got Mr. New York John. He hates Philadelphia with a passion. That guy right there. It's Victor Cruz. And my main man, Super Bowl champion. Yes. Mr. Willie Colon. Look, we got a great show for you today. Tons of NFL stuff coming your way. Some NBA as well. You had two of the older teams in basketball vying for the 9th spot last night. Golden State and your LA Lakers. But, the big news yesterday was not my fight with Philadelphia, although it seems like in Philly they ain't got nothing to talk about. I don't know, maybe stop being the murder capital of our country and worry about that instead of worrying about what I have to say. But that's just me talking out loud. I don't know. But something happened yesterday that is not getting a lot of attention, that deserves a lot of attention.
Okay.
Because we haven't done it, no joke, in over 50 years. And I'm saying to myself, when an American ship lands on the surface of the moon, and we haven't done that since 1972, that should be a big deal. Because I started thinking the difference in sports in our country from 1972, the last time we landed on the moon, to yesterday, the new time we've landed on the moon. In 1972, when we landed on the moon, Bruce Jenner was the best male athlete in this country.
All right, Bruce.
Oh, yeah.
Go, Bruce.
Where is he now?
Now he's on the cover of the SI swimsuit issue.
Yeah.
It's changed.
Went from Wheaties. He was from the Wheaties box and now to the swimsuit.
Yeah.
Quite the transition.
O.J. Simpson was about to run for 2,000 yards, and everybody loved him.
Great back.
A little different.
Yeah, the juice is loose. Different energy.
The New York Knicks were about to go to back-to-back NBA Finals.
Look at that.
They lost this one to the Lakers. They come back, of course, the very next year and beat the Lakers, and Willis Reed is the MVP. A lot has changed in these 50-plus years, Jacoby.
First of all, I want to fact check you. Did we really land on the moon tonight?
Somebody landed on the moon yesterday, but there were no people on the ship. The ship landed on the moon. The one giant step is exactly right.
Always bring it back to the Giants, Victor.
There you go.
Yeah. Always bring it back to the Giants.
That's what he does. And then I spent most of my night last night trying to figure out all this time we spend on this show, with this verbal diarrhea about who's the guy that's most likely to upstage Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. And I gave it a lot of thought. And then I came up with the answer, and I blissfully fell asleep. And I got, for this week, the most amount of sleep I've gotten the entire week.
You look well rested. You look great.
You actually
look darker.
That's called tanning cream. That's called tanning cream. That's all that is. And you're not going to like the answer. But I can defend it against all comers.
Okay.
So throughout the show, I want you to I'm not going to put you on the spot, but if you want to kind of throw arrows at and poke holes in my answer, it's clear to me. I had the epiphany, and then I fell deeply asleep. And like I said, I got 5 hours straight.
Good for you.
I never get 5 hours straight. There's only one man that is currently playing in the NFL that we can make a salient argument for this guy and this team being the right team to upstage and beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay, I'm ready.
And that man yesterday, as a matter of fact, to show you that he's multi-talented, played a round of golf for the first time in about 6 months. And he had a hole-in-one on his very first par 3. And that man wears number 8 for the New York Jets. It is Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. And the more I think about it, the more emboldened I become that it ain't Joe Burrow and the Bengals. It's not Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. It's not Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. It's not even the machine, Brock Purdy and San Francisco. The team with the best shot to beat the Kansas City Chiefs and stop the three-peat is Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. And never again on this show will we sing, it's just the same old Jets. So I want you guys to let that sink in. Don't be disappointed with that.
You know I wasn't clapping at it.
I want you to let that sink in. I will defend that statement against the three of you throughout the entire show. So if you want to jot down some notes.
Oh, I already have.
If you want to jot down a couple notes as to why you think I'm wrong, I've come up with every argument the three of you might make today, and I come with fully loaded ammo ready to defend my stance. That is the Jets, not the Bengals, not the Bills, not the Ravens, not the Niners, not the Cowboys that have the best chance of stopping the three-peat.
More than just that? Or?
Oh, yeah, I got much more. But it's a short segment.
Got it, okay.
Just getting started. I have a sweatshirt on. They're going to make me take it off during the break.
Really?
Yes, they are.
I thought that was all day.
Keep it up.
I want to wear it all day. I'm being told it must come off.
Oh, man.
So it must come off.
Okay.
We do have a great show for you today. Tons of football. We got some free agency stuff for you. We got some Stephon Diggs for you. And we've got that for you. Can we now accept the fact that the Golden State Warrior run is over? Next on FS1. Let's go. Let's do a little basketball here.
Let's talk about it.
The guys, obviously, this is not what it would have been maybe 7, 8 years ago, but Lakers Warriors is still a big deal for a lot of basketball fans because you got Steph. Now, here's what you didn't have last night. And maybe Jacoby can help me out because, not to put words in his mouth, I think Jacoby really likes LeBron.
Oh,
I do like LeBron.
I think he really likes LeBron.
It's hard to defend him sometimes.
Yeah, I think he really likes
It's
LeBron
hard to defend him sometimes.
So I see Anthony Davis is on the court. Obviously, Steph's on the court. Dre's on the court. Clay's on the court. All that.
LeBron?
And I'm saying to myself,
Where's the
we just
king?
came out of the
Where's
All-Star
LeBron?
break.
He played in the All-Star game.
He didn't play the game before the All-Star break. Played in the All-Star break,
First half.
which was on Sunday.
40.
Hasn't had a game since Sunday.
He had a bad
He's
ankle.
playing tonight against the Spurs and Wamba Yamba Mama. And I'm saying to myself, this is a big game because you got about 30 games left. You have to start this quote-unquote second half. Neither one of these two teams is in the top 6, so they're a solidified playoff team. They're kind of jockeying for, are you going to get that home game, meaning you could lose one and still have another game? And LeBron James decides not to play?
So here's the problem.
What?
Adam Silver's a friend of the show. He watches the show every morning. He listens to the podcast on his commute home.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. You have a nationally televised game. Steph Curry against LeBron James. Warriors, Lakers coming back from the All-Star break. Like, this is the marquee event.
Correct. Yeah.
You got to play.
100%.
You can't play tonight against the Spurs and not play last night on the nationally televised game, Warriors-Lakers.
To further that point, because you're dead on right, this game was scheduled on purpose to be the first game nationally televised coming out of the All-Star break.
This is the problem.
It's got two of, let's just say, the 5 or 6 biggest stars in the league. And there is no excuse. I don't want to hear about back-to-back. I don't want to hear about, you want him in the marquee matchup against, Wembanyama, blah, blah, blah. No. This was the marquee matchup. You haven't played a basketball game in essentially a week. Why are you not on the court?
Yeah, especially like Jacoby mentioned, the All-Star game, you said on the second half was supposedly a bum ankle, right? And then you watched last night, AD was pretty much unstoppable. He had 27. Now you put him on court. If LeBron played, this is a different outcome of that game. And so when you look at the Lakers in their totality, man, you got to understand, the Warriors are only a half game behind you, right? And you're talking about the Jazz behind them. So if you're LeBron James, you want to make another surge, this was the time to do it. You start the tone, you set the tone.
And look, we all respect the fact at 39 years old, he's not going to play every game. He may not play back-to-backs, especially ones that are on the road. But you got 28, 29, whatever amount of games left in this second half, and you're fighting to stay in it. Now, I think we all agree they're not going to drop down out of the top 10 because the teams behind them stink. But this is the problem the NBA's got. And I know we're focusing on LeBron, and you can make every excuse you want that he's earned it, he deserves it. I'm not arguing any of that. But this is a problem. And if I'm a Laker fan, take out the league and the nationally televised game and all that stuff. If I'm a Laker fan, a diehard Laker fan, and I'm concerned about, am I going to make a run like I did last year before I got waxed by the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals, and I come out of the All-Star break, and I'm like, here we go. 30-game sprint to the finish line. And the very first game against a rival in my conference that I'm jockeying with positions with right now, and that guy, the guy, decides not to play.
Yeah, flatly.
It sucks.
He can't miss any more games. Like, I know the back-to-back thing, and I know he's 39, but if you really want to make a push toward the end of this season, if you really want to see where you stack up, and typically the question mark is AD, right? We're always worried about, is AD going to play? How's it? AD looked great last
Oh,
night.
He did look good last
He looked
All
dominant. He
season.
looked like the AD all season for the most part. He's looked pretty dominant, and we need LeBron to follow suit so that we can see a real assessment of this team for the next 30 games and see where they
There's
net out.
another little sneaky storyline here. And I'm sure we have the best staff in televisions. They're going to put up the Western Conference standings
played
here.
three
I'm sure
quarters.
they're going to do it.
I know where you're going.
However,
Phenomenal staff.
there's a huge difference between being the 9 seed and the 8 seed. If you are the 9 seed, you got one chance. You lose that one game and you're out. If you're the 8 seed, you can lose the first playing game and then get another chance to make the playoffs.
Right.
It's a huge difference.
Right, and to further that point, you're 4 games out of the 8th spot right now,
Yeah.
and you've only got what's do the math for me right there? 29 games.
I just made that up.
It's not 29, 56. It's 25. They got 25 games. Hey, you're the 20.
That sounded confident, though, didn't I?
Dude, they got 25 games to go, and I'm not saying they threw last night's game away, but LeBron did. LeBron
They did,
decided to minimize the importance of last night's game. It is not easy to make up 4 games in the loss column over a 1-month stretch and have a 6-week stretch, and that's now what they have to do to get, as Jacoby said, out of the spot that they're in. And I don't know that they're going to do it. And it just shows the total disregard for the fan base and the other guys in your locker room that you're going to take another day off. If you told me he had just played 4 games in 6 nights and his knees are killing him, he's 39 years old, I don't like it, but I get it.
Yep.
But the man has not played a basketball game in a week. How are you not playing? Now, part of me thinks the answer is, well, San Antonio's a much easier game for them because the Spurs stink. So I'll take this game off. If we lose it, so what? I'm going to come out and score 28 and 15 against a weak San Antonio Spur team. Meaning, it's like you're the lion in the Serengeti. And you're like, well, that yak is wounded, and he's got a limp, and that yak has the strength. So I'm going to let that yak go, and I'm going to wait for you to come into my neighborhood so I can eat you, right? You got to go after both yaks. Kids got to eat.
Yeah, and what's crazy about it, if you watched the Warriors last night, their second unit is really coming along. Like, this is a team, I think, you talk about resurgence. You talking about their second unit with Trace Jackson Davis. Obviously, Clay didn't have a big night, but what Draymond Green has done since coming off of suspension, like, this defense, and you got to give, I know you talk about Curl all the time, you got to give him credit.
No,
him putting
he gets
Draymond,
no credit.
Him putting Draymond Green at center, this is a different outfit. Steph is getting off. The team looks better right now. What's that?
They're an old, slow
I'm telling you.
team. They're not winning another natty. They're not.
Not
That's
a
my
natty.
name for
I
you.
like that.
Meanwhile,
like that.
Joe Lacob is the owner of the Golden State Warriors, and he had this, I guess it was a scheduled press conference or whatever it was, but he talked about the future of Golden State, and he goes, we want to be the best. We're going to try whatever tactic it takes to get out there. I'm not here to screw around. We're not here to screw around. We're not here to just be some team. We're not going to do that, meaning that he doesn't believe the experts out there that the window is shut on their ability to win championships with an S at the end. And I appreciate that from an owner. If I was a Warrior fan, I want that from my owner. But what have you done to make the team better? What have you done? Right, you haven't done anything to make the team better. The team just keeps getting older and older and older. And unfortunately for them, it's a young man's game. And while we all love Steph, he's the greatest shooter of all time in the history of the NBA, they're not winning a championship. There's a reason you're 8 and 9 because you're not very good.
I don't think so, Craig. I think there's a standard, and they believe in the standard they set before them. It's valid they have gotten older, but I talked about the second unit and how they've become, they've emerged. And I also look at Kuminga. Look how the impact he has with the Warriors. He had 12 points last night. So you talk about the second unit coming off the bench. I think the relationship Clay has with Trace, with TJD, has gotten a lot better. So I don't know. I'm not ready to count the Warriors out. I think Draymond has played a pivotal role in making this team come alive, especially getting Steph off. He had 32 points. So I think you just got to continue to give him a shot.
I do think that as good as that second unit has been playing, I don't look at them and like, are they contenders? Are they going to make a run and really do it? I think the pedigree speaks for themselves, but I don't look at them as a team, even as good as this second unit has been, as a team that can really make a run, and you got them up in the
Speaking of Warriors and
championship
Lakers and a guy that used to play out west and was a big part of championship runs, Jordan Poole's having a tough time. Jordan Poole got sent to the bench, rightfully so, not playing very good. And Jordan Poole has now, for our money, the single worst lackadaisical inbound pass of the year. So just before you play
Was it even a pass?
It's a great pass. It's a great pass.
So back it up. Jordan Poole's got the guy inbounding the ball. They're on the offensive side of the court there, and he's going to try to throw a little bounce pass to a teammate for what should be an easy layup. But this is how much Jordan Poole cares about playing basketball for the Wizards. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll just give it to the Nuggets.
How's that?
He got an assist on the Jamal Murray play there. But yeah, that's Jordan Poole's inbound pass last night.
It's been bad for
This is even worse. This is even worse.
Yeah, the defense on the flip is not very
Ever
good.
since he got put to sleep in practice,
It looked like,
Easy.
how do you pronounce it? Thanasis. It looked like Thanasis' defense last week. Anyhow, that's your Laker Golden State Warrior update from last night. It's ugly, and as a Knicks fan, I love every minute of it. Coming up, somebody called Katie a bitch last night.
Whoa! That didn't happen.
That happened 20.
We'll show you the video of it. We'll show you the video of it.
He heard it too.
And did they get kicked out of the game for calling him a bitch? Plus, the Dallas Cowboys are now complaining again, or are they, about how because we're the Cowboys, everybody plays hard against us. Yuck, after this. First time I've ever seen this where you can actually make a wager right now on the entire field of NCAA Division I college teams against Purdue or Connecticut, who've been number 1 and 2 all year long.
Always take the field.
Always take the field. I've never seen that before, and I don't gamble anymore, but having been involved in the gambling world for 50 years, I've never seen, at the end of February, the ability to remove 2 teams only and take the entire field of Division I teams for this year's March Madness tournament. Now, to be fair, Connecticut and Purdue have been the 2 best teams, but the best player's not on Connecticut, and the best player's not on Purdue. Do not sleep on Kentucky's Dillingham. He will be the best pro out of this year's draft, and it will not be close. And remember, I said that on February, whatever today is.
23rd.
Thank you. February 23rd, Dillingham is the best player in America.
A lot of Kyrie Irving comps with Dillingham.
Yeah, and Kyrie, how about AI coming out yesterday saying that in the history of basketball, my guy Kyrie Irving has the best handle the league has ever seen. Sounds like something I said about a year ago, doesn't it?
Did you just give Kyrie Irving a my guy?
It's my guy.
Did you just give Kyrie Irving a my guy?
Even though I'm Jewish.
I was about to say, I was like,
He's not my people's guy. But he says he's an
Let's move on to first in football.
He said he's an Israelite. Doesn't that count?
Close enough.
Listen, my people can dribble. I'll tell you that right now. We can dribble. Go ahead.
All right, we are going to first and football, even though they're in my ear saying that we are not. And we start with Jake Ferguson of the Cowboys. He is the tight end. And here's what he said about the approach of the opponents playing the Cowboys. Quote, I always like to think we're the Dallas Cowboys. Every team that's going to play us is going to bring their all every single time. It's a kill or be killed mentality. That's for you, Willie. We've just got to kill them first. Do you agree that the Cowboys always get their opponent's best game?
Yeah, but I don't think that's unique to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sure the Kansas City Chiefs always get everybody's best game. I'm sure that, the last couple of years, the Niners get everybody's best game. So I think that's just weak cheese is what that is. Out of Jake Ferguson. The other thing I question about Jake Ferguson, all due respect, because he was wide open in
Oh, no.
Here we go.
No.
in that
It's Friday. Like of all days. Of all days. Philly hates you. And now you're talking about Jake Ferguson.
I'm just saying, Jake Ferguson's wide open up the seam for a game-winning touchdown, against the Philadelphia Eagles. Spot the lie on that one. But, dude, you're Jake Ferguson. Who are you? You've been in the league for like a minute, right? You're barely even a Dallas Cowboy, and you're complaining. Well, he's not really complaining. He's acknowledging the fact that, every team's always up for us. Plus, they play a lot of primetime games, obviously, a lot of the late window games, here on Fox. And what he's saying essentially speaks volumes about the kind of the personality of the Dallas Cowboys. The troubling part of this is that a 25-year-old unproven kid who did have a solid year for them, I don't want to diminish what he brought to them. He's a very good tight end. But that a 25-year-old kid with very little experience in the NFL is now publicly telling the world that the Dallas Cowboys are soft. That's basically what he said, that we need a killer mentality. We don't have that. And every Thursday, Sunday, or Monday that we play, I see it in every team we play. So that tells me that, they need someone in that locker room to pull a Willie Colon. and basically, challenge guys and challenge guys' manhoods. Are we going to just show up and be soft, or are we going to fight?
Yeah, we used to have an old saying in Pittsburgh, don't go from gangster to girl, right? Like when you're in the locker room.
All due respect to girls, of course.
When you're in the locker room, man, it's easy to see what you're going to do and who you're going to beat up. But when you get on the field, are you about that life? And I think when you go back to the Green Bay game and they got dog walked for 4 quarters, it makes you scratch your head. It's like, what happened to them gangsters that was in the locker room that was supposedly start that game and host the Lombardi?
Yeah.
And it didn't happen.
I think one of the interesting things for the Cowboys this past year was the schedule. Like, they acted like, your words, not mine, I appreciate it, though, gangsters when you're playing bad teams.
Yeah.
And you're beating up on the Giants early and the Patriots and the Jets and all those games we talked about. And we're trying to figure out, were the Cowboys really that good or the schedule, is playing a role in those beatdowns. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a game against a team that's want to punch you back. The Lions game, the Niners, Buffalo Bills. And all of a sudden, you're not the bully on the block, right?
Now, I will say on the other side of this, obviously there's different games you get up for, right? Division games, you understand those are a little bit more important and things like that. But in terms of every game being this mentality of, you know what I mean, like killer be killer. Every week is important. No other game is more important than the other. Every game matters so much to your division, to your record, to your team. Every game, you have to have that mentality each and every time you step out there.
It's almost like you say you just got a locker room full of LeBrons. In any event, what's second of football, Jacoby?
But moving on, 2 seconds down now, Justin Jefferson is the Vikings star wide receiver. He's been available to get a new contract, a new deal for quite some time, yet it has not been done. So my question for you is, do you think a deal for Jefferson is inevitable, is imminent, or is there some trouble in Minnesota?
Yeah, I've heard 2 different schools on this. One that, they don't want to pay him the guarantee he wants.
Right.
That's out there kind of, in the ether out of Minnesota. But I've also heard people that apparently cover the Minnesota Vikings claim that it's just negotiating posture. And they're happy to give him the big contract. They're trying to figure out the best way to pay him where it doesn't totally stop them from signing free agents and improving, need positions that they have. Justin Jefferson is going to get a major contract from the Minnesota Vikings. And he has to be a priority for them because obviously he's their best player on offense. But they do have some other issues on that team. Yeah. What are they doing with Kirk Cousins? Do they think they have a star running back on the roster now? Are they looking for one? There's going to be a dozen guys available. How did that defense come up small late in the year? Things like that. But there's 2 schools of thought again. And I'm not in Minnesota, but having read about them online over the last couple of days, the guys that cover the Vikings think, don't get alarmed because it hasn't gotten done yet. It's going to get done.
Well, I think for the most part, I'd be smart if I was him. I want to know what's happening at the quarterback position. Yep. I'm not just going out there and getting some rando that's going to be my quarterback that I don't know, that I'm unsure of. Kirk Cousins obviously has been a guy that understands who I am, understands how to get me the football, has been the guy that I've had my best years with. So I'm going to chill and see what you guys do at quarterback before I even make it.
Right, and that's the other rub that's out there, not knowing what they're going to do with Kirk Cousins. Look, he'll play this year on the current contract, and then obviously all hell breaks loose if they don't get him signed by the end of the year. But I think part of the conversation what Vic just said is, I want to be a Viking. I love living in Minnesota. I love what the owner, all that stuff.
Playing in the dome is great.
But I'd like to know who my quarterback is, right? Kirk Cousins tears the Achilles. I'm not even sure when, from a physical standpoint, he's coming back. Yeah. Dobbs, of course, not there anymore. Who's the guy? Yeah. Because the one thing I won't do as a great wide receiver is languish in a city that doesn't have a quarterback. So I think Minnesota is really under the gun to get Kirk Cousins signed, and then the Jefferson deal happens very easily.
Moving on to third in football, Falcons running back Bijan Robinson says he's going to get 2,000 rushing yards next season. Here is what he had to say. He said the following, and I quote, "I want 2,000 yards rushing. I know those are big expectations. I think it's going to be one of those special seasons that Atlanta's been waiting for." He had 976 last year.
Sorry, how many yards last year?
976, I believe.
So he's played 1 year in the NFL. He didn't run for 1,000 yards, but next year he's going to run for 2,000.
2,000.
Yeah. Okay, my man.
Big wish list there.
Okay. All right. If you say so, look, Bijan Robinson showed he is one of the top young running backs in the sport, and his elusiveness is kind of Barry Sanders-esque at times. And there were games that they played last year. We're all watching saying, how did that guy only get 11 carries?
Yeah.
Right? You're vying for a division title. And when I look at the last 3 games of the year last year, 12 carries, 15 carries, 11 carries. And I'm saying to myself, this is the best rookie running back in the league.
Yep.
He is hard to tackle. He is a matchup problem. Why are we running this kid 10 times a game? We're not going to win on the arm of Desmond Ridder. So I'm very confused about how he's going to run for 2,000 yards when they weren't committed to giving him the rock the 20 times a game you should give him the rock.
Yeah, I mean, their offensive line is shady as hell. And on top of that, offensively, they rank 9th in rushing. But the big issue is what the hell happened to Kyle Pitts, right?
Yeah.
What the hell happened to Drake London? You don't have a quarterback. So as much as he wants the ball and be that guy, they have bigger issues to kind of bigger fish to fry, if you will. But Raheem Morris and now that Arthur Smith, by the way, who is a running coordinator.
That's right.
That's his staple. That's why he's in Pittsburgh to kind of revamp that running game. So for me, it's not what Bijan wants, it's what the Falcons need. They need a quarterback, and they need to address how to get Kyle Pitts and Drake London more effective.
He also is very good catching the ball out of the
I
back.
was just going to say that I think that's one of his best attributes as well. So it's hard to just pigeonhole him into just rushing the ball because they're going to need him to do much more than just rush it for 2,000. I see him having 2,000 maybe all-purpose yards throughout the year, but 2,000 just rushing is going to be tough.
Yeah, he's not
Look,
that
it's
guy.
an easy division, though, so if you commit to this kid and he stays healthy, and obviously the big question mark is who the Atlanta Falcon quarterback's going to be. But it's a lousy division that, frankly, should be relegated.
There's a couple games.
Drop him down? USFL? Here we go.
I made the mistake of watching some Falcons games. There's a couple third downs, but he's not even on the field. And you're just like, what is how is he not on the field? It didn't make any sense.
Well, that's why they have a new coach.
Don't do that. Moving on to fourth and football. We're going for it.
Go for it.
There we go.
And we have new Chargers offensive coordinator Greg Roman. He had an interesting quote about the team's offensive history before he got there. He said, quote, "Can you imagine Justin Herbert with a great running game? We don't know, but I can imagine what it might look like." So that's kind of the vision. This is curious to me, Mr. Carton, because I do remember Justin Herbert with a good running game with Austin Eckler in the past in Los Angeles with the Chargers.
Yeah, it's funny we were just talking about Bijan catching the ball. Austin Eckler did both also, right? Austin
Eckler's not there all these years.
It's funny, but Austin Eckler's not a 1,000-yard back from running the ball.
Correct.
Austin Eckler was a 1,000-plus yards guy, 1,500 yards or close to it one year when you combine pass catching, receiving yards, and rushing yards. So to be fair, they have not had that bellwether running back who's going to get the rock 20 times a game and run for 1,400 yards and then complement that with another 500 yards catching the ball. So what he's saying is not accurate. And this is the year to go get a running back. Because as we've said all week long, you have a dozen high-quality star running backs, all in their mid-20s, all available, and he's right. But you also have to commit to handing the ball off.
Correct.
So you could have Emmitt Smith in the backfield. If you don't give him the ball, it don't matter that he's in the backfield. So that's the rub for them. You have a quarterback whisperer on a team that doesn't really need it, but you need his creativity of how to plan an offense, which is what Harbaugh does as well as anybody, and that's been proven at the collegiate level and obviously at the NFL level, taking San Francisco to a Super Bowl, with Colin Kaepernick, right? So now the reality is, if you're going to go get one of those stud running backs, are you going to use them?
Yeah.
And I do agree with Roman there. If they use them, that offense is lights out good.
Yeah, I think the Chargers want that old thing back. It goes back to my rookie year in 2006 when the Chargers were them, right? Led by Phillip Rivers and LaDainian Tomlinson. That's when they were effective offense. Schottenheimer was the head coach. And I remember playing against that offense and realized that it wasn't just the magic of Phillip Rivers. LT was that guy, right? So if you're the Chargers, and just like the Steelers, the reason they got Arthur Smith there because they want some of that old school football back. And I think the Chargers want some of that old identity back by bringing. Now you have the quarterback. You have a running back, possibly in Saquon Barkley, who I think will be a great fit for them. But you you talked about Eckler. Eckler only had averaged 3.5 yards last year. He wasn't that guy.
He had like 5.
Right. They were ranked 25th in rushing. So I think having a big-time running back like a Saquon, what Herbert and Harbaugh, this could be the old Chargers.
I think for Justin Herbert to have success, they need to have some balance. He can't throw the ball 40 times a game and be worn out by week 11. Like he needs to have some balance in the backfield to give him some help.
Yeah, he looked like Rowdy Piper at the end of the year. He was just band-aids and
Did George want to know if he was wearing underwear?
all the time.
It was almost like the new baseball jerseys.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I can't believe it's been 18 years since you got drafted.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I know.
Anyhow, we will get to Kevin Durant being called a bitch a little bit later on in the program. That is still coming, and we have the video to support it. And there's a question for you. Look at that handsome guy.
Why are we doing this?
Is he gonna play?
Look at that guy.
February.
Looks scared.
He's taking us all the way to the Super Bowl. You know, one of the big things we talk about, especially this year with the whole Justin Fields saga and what's supposed to be a really good crop of young quarterbacks coming out of the draft, Drake May, Carolina. Obviously, you got Caleb Williams at USC. Are the current quarterbacks in the NFL and which ones you can trust and which ones you can't trust. And with that, we've got the most burning questions about quarterbacks with Mr. Jacoby.
So I'm doing this segment under protest.
Why is that?
Because the first question they want me to ask you is how far will Aaron Rodgers take the Jets? I mean, what are we doing?
Quite easy, my friend.
What are we doing?
Easy. Look, here's the deal. He's got more MVP awards than any other active quarterback in the NFL.
What?
He's a Super Bowl champion. It's true. Super Bowl champion, and he's the great Pied Piper. The great Pied Piper, more so than any other football player in the NFL. He also shot a hole-in-one in his first round of golf since the Pro-Am at Pebble Beach, all right? Here's the dealio. We have a top-5 defense. We have a rock star running back in Breece Hall. We have a rock star wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. We have a really good tight end. We've got some average backup wide receivers, and we've got a lousy offensive line. But I believe that David Bakhtiari will be our new left tackle. I believe we will get another free agent offensive lineman, and whoever the best offensive lineman in the draft is when it's finally our time to pick.
That's a hope.
And when you put that all together, we truly do have all the pieces of a championship team. Aaron Rodgers will do the unthinkable. He will lead the New York Jets to Super Bowl 59, where we will meet the San Francisco 49ers. And you can write that down, put it in an envelope, put it in some kind of safe and save it for next year. But the Kansas City Chief reign is over. The Bills' reign in our division is over. And Aaron Rodgers will show you why he's worth every penny of the $36 million he's getting this year to be the New York Jet quarterback. Let's go.
Look at Willie's face. That's all you need to know.
I'm paralyzed by it. Like, I just don't know. Listen, I believe Aaron Rodgers is a hell of a quarterback, but this team has a lot of holes. You mentioned the offensive line. Mekhi Becton is going to be a free agent. What the hell is going to happen with Ali, the pass rusher, and Bryce Huff? He had 10 sacks. He's going to hit the mark because he needs big money. The bottom line, Aaron Rodgers is a Band-Aid. He's going to need help because outside of Garrett Wilson, what do we have? CJ, whatever his name is out of here.
He's out. I agree.
He's gone. We don't have a solid number 2. So right now, we need more weapons to make sure we maximize what Aaron Rodgers
of the ball, you need more weapons.
Haters.
And he's a year removed from Achilles surgery.
Right.
He's another year older. Who knows what he's going to be? Honestly, we don't know what type of Aaron Rodgers we're going to get after
And can we
especially
pivot?
with no weapons on the outside.
Yeah, and can we pivot? If the Jets don't come out the gate as hot as we expect them to, what Aaron Rodgers are we getting?
We're getting the great Aaron Rodgers, the MVP Aaron Rodgers, the guy that still thinks he has something to prove. Because people like you guys who played the sport, so we have great respect for that. He wants to prove guys like you wrong because you guys are saying what a lot of people are saying. Oh, 39 years old, after the Achilles injury, what's the guy going to be like? And all I see right there is a winner. That guy is a winner, and that guy is going to lead the Jets to the promised land. Look, Mark Sanchez, no disrespect, took the New York Jets to the Super Bowl. How? We had a great defense, and we had a badass running attack. And that's how we made those runs.
Line.
Yeah, for sure. We had a good offensive line with Faneca and Mangold and those guys, and Brick and 100%.
Yes.
That being said, you have the same kind of makeup of this Jets team where we're led by our defense. We have a legitimate running attack. We do have a stud wide receiver. And now you've got the quarterback, again, all due respect to Mark Sanchez, who's light years better than what Mark Sanchez was. Stick to the script. Run the ball a lot and let that guy do his thing. Defense gets lots of turnovers. See New Orleans first Sunday in February. And by the way, I make this announcement now.
I got a headache.
Because I got it from the highest of higher ups. We're live in New Orleans. That's right. right, baby.
We're going straight from Bourbon
That's
Street into
right.
the studio.
Bing, bang, Shazam.
If the
That's
show
right.
starts at 7 a.m., we'll just party until 6:45.
That's right.
We're gonna
What's
get
a
us
1 hour
off.
time
Let's
difference
go.
in New
We're gonna
Orleans?
get
It's
us
all
off
good.
service.
We're off the air.
Yeah, so I got
Moving on.
confirmation on that, so I'm very happy about that.
Moving on to our second quarterback we will be discussing in this segment.
Who dat?
That is Dakota Prescott. He is going to get a new deal this offseason. Do you think that he will become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL this offseason?
Took me a second to figure out who we were talking about.
Really?
Who the hell's Dakota?
Full
all
name's
good.
Dakota.
Look,
Where's my money?
It's crazy and good for him, right? Right place, right time. Contract comes up, and you get paid. He's a top 10 quarterback. Obviously, we've been through this a million times on this show and every other show on this network. He's not the guy you can trust in January. That's his legacy right now. That's the hump he has to come over on a personal level. You can make the argument that when it's all said and done, he's the third best quarterback in the history of the Dallas Cowboy franchise behind Troy Aikman and Rodgers Staubach. And he's going to be the highest paid quarterback in the history of the sport only because of when his contract comes up.
Right.
Now, he's under contract for this year, about $59 million against the cap. And if you're a good and smart businessman, and clearly Jerry Jones and the Jones family are, this is a no-brainer. You restructure it and extend it to give yourselves more cap relief to go acquire guys now. If the Cowboys are truly all in, Dak Prescott becomes the highest paid quarterback on an AAV level, and it allows you to sign other people so that Dak next year can do what he's never done, and that's advance to at least the NFC Championship game. But he will be the highest paid quarterback. There's no doubt about that.
And I think he's deserving of it.
I
do. Like the bottom
He's
line.
not deserving of being the highest paid. He's deserving of a lengthy contract because he's a top 10 quarterback. But if you said who's deserving of the most money,
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
Like, that's not for debate.
Absolutely.
No way you can debate that after
Right.
winning a Super Bowl.
Well, there you
I
go.
give you that.
What else you got?
Moving on to our third quarterback we'll be discussing. And Craig, I'm not going to ask you this question because I know where you stand on this issue. Willie.
Yes.
Do you expect the machine, Brock Purdy, to be in the MVP conversation again next year?
Coming soon.
I do. I think because of the offense he plays in and the weapons he has. Now, what happens to Brandon
System
Ayuk?
quarterback.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about system.
Assistant quarterback. You just said it.
And listen, they scored 61 touchdowns last season. You know what I'm talking about? They had 7 touchdowns in the playoffs. And you talk about what he did in the playoffs in those 2 games to get to the Super Bowl. He put the team on his back. I wish we had Greg Jennings here for that. You know, so what he can do and what he has been able to do, NFC Championship, Super Bowl appearance, he is the leader of that offense. It's hard for me to believe that he won't be in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's that simple. They're going to be the best team in the NFC. He's the starting quarterback of the best team in the NFC. So, like, by default, he's in the conversation. Doesn't mean his stats will warrant it, but by default, he's in the
And I
conversation.
hate that system quarterback stuff. Like,
too.
yes, he's in the system, but he's got to operate in the system. He's got to get the ball out to his receivers. He's got to get the ball out to the playmakers. He's got to be on time, on target. He still has to execute what we're seeing within his offense, and he's done that to the highest of his ability last year, and he'll do it again this
And
year.
again, if one right guard decides to block Chris Jones, they win the Super Bowl. One
Panic.
play. Like that Super Bowl, the more I watch it, rewatch it, because I do that from time to time,
those.
that Super Bowl came down to one freaking play. And if they block Chris Jones on that one play,
That's the ball game.
he's either hitting Debo on the slant because Snead fell down, or he's hitting Jefferson there on the flat. Either way, it's a touchdown, and San Francisco wins the Super Bowl. One play that
How do
Super
you
Bowl
not
came
block
down
I
to.
just love that dude,
Important
Craig,
guy.
coming home from the show
Panic.
and starting on the Super Bowl. He's
what I do.
watching it for the 12th time.
That's what I
He's
do.
just sitting on the couch, just like, Super Bowl, Greg.
I watched Super Bowl 7 times. Yeah.
Why?
Because I've been
For the
bored the
show,
last couple
prepping for
weeks.
the
Watching
show.
on the walks?
It's been cold outside.
He's preparing for the
games
show.
on.
my-
Basketball
He
games
cares
on.
about the audience.
You really like the Usher halftime.
No, I didn't.
You did not?
Only when he took his shirt off. I like that.
Okay.
Wait, what? You know what, guys?
They tell me we got to take a break. Good news for you if you are just tuning in or you'll go through your morning prep. You have not missed the video yet when Kevin Durant got called a bitch. That is still coming up on this show. We've got all your other headlines as well. And we go back to Philadelphia because, once again, I'm right. Philadelphia's wrong. And we learned a little bit more of what the dysfunction was in Philly right after this.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Carton Show. We have your early morning headlines. And guess what? We have more news
Take the ball.
from
Take the ball.
Philadelphia. The latest is this: Fletcher Cox, the veteran lineman, one of the leaders in the locker room, had some notes about Jalen Hurts' stoic demeanor.
Interesting.
And he said that his lack of emotion sort of hurt the team. Do you think that Jalen Hurts is part of the problem in Philadelphia, Mr. Carton?
Wait, are you suggesting that there's dysfunction in the Eagle locker room? Because it seems
Who
like
said that?
What? Seems like
Who said that?
Couldn't tell.
Seems like that's been denied all week.
Couldn't
And
tell.
Philly's up in arms about a handsome guy on TV saying that there's dysfunction
Very handsome.
amongst the players, quote unquote, in the Eagle locker room. And then it comes out yesterday from the number one reporter that does the sidelines for the Eagles, Howard Eskin, who I worked with 30 years ago and know very well, who wanted to counter me saying that there's dysfunction in the locker room by saying I totally exaggerated what I was talking about, but there was major dysfunction in the locker room because Fletcher Cox and other unnamed players had a real problem with the way Jalen Hurts carries himself from, as you said, that stoic emotion. Now, the rub on that is he was the same guy when they went to the Super Bowl, and nobody had a problem with it.
Right.
The issue now, of course, is when you're losing games and things are falling apart, and you look to your quarterback, the leader, has to be the leader of your team, and he's sitting there in a winter parka on the bench, mouth, lips tight, not saying anything, and not, getting the troops rallied or whatever it is that motivates you guys on a sideline. People look at that negatively. When you're winning, not a problem. Why? Because you're winning, right? It's like winning covers all warts and pimples and blemishes. Losing exposes them. So it's interesting that Philadelphia overreacted to what I said here on Tuesday, which was there's a major dysfunctional problem amongst the players in the locker room that cannot be fixed. And people ran wild with that. And now, in an attempt to claim that I don't know what I'm talking about, the guy who thinks he's closest to the organization essentially came out and said everything I said was accurate. Now, the specific stories might be different and might be alluding to this thing versus that thing, but you have a problem amongst the players. And when the players, especially a respected veteran like Fletcher Cox, who I do believe is retiring from the NFL, who carries a lot of weight with his voice, when a guy like that comes out and has a problem with the quarterback and says it publicly, how can you not tell me that's dysfunctional?
Yeah, but even when this team was 10-1, we sat here on this desk and talked about there's still something wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Very true.
Now, I mean, Jalen Hurts specifically, he's not the same quarterback, right? Like, the bottom line, he's thrown more interceptions. He had 6 one year. Now he had 15 in the season. He rushed for fewer yards. At the second half of the season, he was clearly pissed off at Brian Johnson, the offense coordinator, because there was a disconnect. This team, in order for them to win, they needed to run the ball. They didn't do that. They were absolutely a dumpster fire on defense. So his frustration comes from he was a shell of himself of what he did his Super Bowl run. And then when you get paid that much money, you're supposed to be the difference maker, and he wasn't. He actually was the
Stop
problem.
on that, only because Derek Gunn, who covers the Eagles, I mentioned him on yesterday's show, came out and said that the players that are actively on the Eagles have told him that when he did get the big contract and the $200 million, that he was starting to be pulled in a lot of different directions. You guys can speak to that because all of a sudden you're wanted for things and appearances and endorsements and speaking to this group and that charity. And that's the real life of an NFL star, of course, as you guys know. But the claim is that the guys in the locker room thought he acted differently. And he had a tough time handling all the pressures of being the man and getting the money with the other guys in the locker room. So the point is this. Philly can yell at me all you want. You can, send me the death threats you've been sending me, threatening to kick my ass and all that.
Willie will protect you, Craig.
It's all good. I'm not worried about it. Thank you, though. But the reality is that everything I said spot on. And every time somebody comes out and tries to counter what I said, they wind up doubling down on what I said and backing me up on what I said. This is a dysfunctional mess. Whether it's a problem because Big Dom's not on the sideline to hold back the immature, emotional head coach, whether it's the fact that they demoted a defensive coordinator but kept him in the locker room with the guys, and then demoted the second defensive coordinator and fired both of them, and then fired the offensive coordinator, or Jalen Hurts can't handle the fame and the money, or whatever the nonsense is. There's no disputing that there's nonsense. It's happening in real time. And it just took a New Yorker to point it out, which is why you people have such a tough time handling it. But you cannot argue whether or not there is a major problem amongst the players in that locker room, because Fletcher Cox just told you there is.
Yeah,
Not to mention that what's his name? Byard? Kevin Byard, who came over from Tennessee, came out during the season, I think it was before the Tampa game in January, and said there are more leaks here than on the Titanic, and it's divisive. Like, what more evidence do you small-minded morons in Philadelphia need? Whether it's the guys on the radio, and none of them have the balls to call me and have me come on and talk about the report, and they all have my phone number, or it's the Eagles themselves. You cannot deny that there's a major problem inside that locker room, because there is, and the players have told you that there is. So own it. And stop your bitching, your snowflaking, because one guy in New York pointed it out.
Hold that. Hold that.
What else you got?
Nah, this whole team's a dumpster fire. I've been on this, just my third day on the show this week. We've had 7 different storylines about the Eagles, and all different storylines about something going wrong. The latest being Fletcher Cox talking about his quarterback. Listen, all of it's a problem, and if it doesn't get fixed now, it's going to spill over into the season and be even worse as the season
So,
goes.
Willie, I want to ask you a question, because this thing about Hurts is, you remember when they made that field goal against the Bills? Right?
Yes, sir.
It was an impossible field goal, and we celebrated Jalen Hurts because he was stoic. We celebrated how he was unflappable and how he was unemotional, and he was just a statue.
But
right?
look who he's talking to.
But we talked about how we've celebrated him for this,
Johnson,
but now he's being criticized for this. And as someone who's been in the locker room before, do you need your quarterback to be more vocal and to lead?
Well, no, because it's really, it's 2 ways, right? Like, you want a guy to be consistent in who he is. If that's not who he is, you don't want him in the most crucial moments to be the rah-rah guy, because then you come off fake, right? At the end of the day, if Jalen Hurts, what's the caveat, what's the start of him is that he is stoic, right? He is even killed. There's other guys in that moment that can be the rah-rah guy. Forcing him to be that rah-rah guy doesn't necessarily give you the joke. But Victor said something the other day that hits. When it's in reference to Eli Manning, when it was time to have a comment or say something to the team, he said it. So the problem is, if Jalen Hurts doesn't receive or is not tapped into the pulse of the team during crucial moments of the game, that's a disconnect, right? Like, because not everybody's going to stand up and be like, hey, let's charge the hill. But when we need a burst, we need it. Like, go back to the playoff run. George Kittle said one of the most pivotal times that happened, one of the pivotal moments of that playoff run was Brock Purdy saying, hey, man, enough is enough. We got to show up and we got to go get it. Mm-hmm. And Brock Purdy is much like Jalen Hurts. He doesn't say a whole bunch. He just performs.
I think Victor made the great point earlier this week. Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowl MVPs. And as you said, he was not a big talker, but when he did talk, you listened.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And that was the biggest thing. And we understood when he spoke, you're like, everybody was, I'm talking about eerie, dead silent. And we listened to this man speak, and we nodded our head and took heed, and then we buckled up our chin straps and was out there ready to play for him.
Yeah, I think the real issue with Philly, and they'll get into it more this upcoming season, there are plays when he makes decisions with the ball and doesn't throw the ball necessarily to the right guy, the open guy, and then, they want to punting. And you go to the sideline, and he's sitting there stoically because that's his personality. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the other guys are, putting on a song and a dance because they're pissed because lost opportunity. Yeah. Or come on, man, like, how did you not see me? That's the play. Throw me the ball. And that's the stuff A.J. Brown talked about a lot this year. It wasn't that he was pissed all the time that he wasn't getting the rock. That's part of it, for sure. But there's all 22 videos. I've seen Chris Sims do a great job on this, where the play that was called worked, but Jalen didn't stay in the pocket long enough to find the open guy, or gave up on plays a lot. And, if you're a wide receiver especially, and you're busting your ass and you're open, and the play call worked, and your quarterback gave up on the play for whatever the reason is, that's frustrating.
But, Craig, go back to what Bosa said going into after that game against the Eagles, after they beat the hell out of the Eagles, and he goes, listen, we knew the blueprint of how to get after Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
Take away his first option, he's going to look to scramble, and the offense is going to die right in front of you. And it happened throughout that game.
Moving on to our second headline, and it involves the New York Jets. Yeah. Sauce Gardner is back on Twitter, and he's tweeting away again. This time, the GM Les Sauce. He said that I'm going to sign Calvin. If that don't work, I'm signing Mike. I can't go with either one of them. I feel like T won't be available for me to sign him. Le Sauce, the GM of the Jets. He's obviously talking about Calvin Ridley and Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Do you expect the Jets to bring in a high-profile receiver?
I think Mike Evans is going to be a Jet. Yes, I do. And they have to bring in a high-profile wide receiver because this is our shot. Aaron Rodgers didn't work out last year because he got hurt. You have to be all in the way we thought we were last year with the guys we acquired who at the time were like, oh, that's a good deal. Turned out not to be guys like Alan Lazard. But, yeah, you're not going to put Aaron Rodgers back out there and not improve the weapons he's got to throw the ball to and obviously the offensive line. So I love Les Sauce, who's my new de facto general manager because I don't know what Joe Douglas is doing right now in the moment. But I know Les Sauce is actively recruiting, which players can do. There are moments where GMs cannot do that because dudes are under contract, but players can talk to fellow players. But I'm hoping that Les Sauce is also talking to whoever the best offensive linemen are out there that are available.
Not as sexy to talk to those.
Not as sexy for sure. No disrespect, because you're sexy.
We love it.
But
You're very sexy.
don't get it twisted.
Great shirt.
The New York Jets are going to get weapons and linemen because we have this tiny little crack of a window where we can win it all.
I was just about to say, this is it. Like,
That's
this
it.
is the year for the Jets. If you guys don't put all the eggs in the basket this year, who knows what happens next year? Who knows who your quarterback will be? You'll be in full reset mode. The whole shebang.
Not just reset from quarterback and players.
We know what's
We'll
gonna
have a new
happen.
head coach.
Coach.
We'll have a new general manager.
New GM.
It'll
Full
be
reset, top to bottom.
start it over
I'm a
again.
little surprised by our friend Victor here.
Go ahead.
As a fellow receiver, I'm telling Sauce Gardner to stay out of my pocket if I'm Garrett Wilson, right? Because I had 95 catches last year.
Garrett Wilson knows he can't do it by himself.
Yeah, but he's due for a contract, and I want to thrive in this offense, and I don't want to be ignored.
I will tell you this, that Garrett Wilson, and they tried so hard in that last game to get him to 100 catches. They were trying their damnedest. But think about this, the disparity. Garrett Wilson last year had, like you said, 95 catches, right?
Yep.
Every other wide receiver combined had 57.
That's disgusting.
So you talk about legitimately a one-man show. And he only had 3 touchdowns, and he had one week 1 against the Bills. So you went 16 weeks with 2 touchdowns, and you were the best wide receiver.
Brought in 3 new receivers.
Well, to be fair, Randall Cobb was brought in to be a babysitter.
Sure.
And
to teach them the offense.
he wasn't really on the team.
Lazard, Mecole Hardman, they brought in receivers.
Yeah, well, at least one Jet won the Super Bowl this year.
Here we go. Moving on to our final headline very quickly. Let's discuss the return of the NBA last night. It was supposed to be a marquee matchup between LeBron James and Steph Curry. They played in the playoffs last year, and guess what? LeBron James did not play.
Why not?
He had a bum ankle, but he did play in the All-Star game, and he is playing tonight against the Spurs. What do you think about LeBron missing this game?
I think it's everything wrong with the NBA, and the thing that we as fans can't stand that Adam Silver can't fix. Because if you don't care enough to put on a show in front of the Golden State Warrior crowd there in what is a huge game when it comes to the final seeding in the Western Conference. These teams are fighting for 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th place, for crying out loud right now. And the thing that bothers me most is I respect the hell out of his game. Damn near 40 years old, he is a legitimate all-star. Take the name LeBron James off and make him John Smith. He's an all-star. He's playing like an all-star. So I'm trying to figure out, he didn't play in their last game before the all-star break. He played about a half of the All-Star game, and that's just a track meet anyway, right? It was like he expended himself. And you have this game, so you haven't played basketball for a week. Even at 39, your body's as well rested as it's going to be for the next 3 months. And I don't understand why he doesn't take some level of responsibility that he owes it to the Laker fan base and the Laker ownership and the NBA, frankly, that this is the marquee game to start the second half of the season. I'd love to tell you it was Knicks Sixers last night, but I know what it is. Nationally televised. This is the game. Some of the biggest stars ever, and you don't play in it? And I'm sorry, as a fan of the sport, I find that to be disgusting and unacceptable. And I don't care if he's playing tonight against the Spurs. I'll tell you why I think he chose this game. Because if we're going to accept the fact that LeBron's not playing back-to-backs anymore at 39 years old, the Spurs suck. So I'll go out there and play against the Spurs because I'll have a better night and I'll sit out the game against the better opponent. Who by the way, Golden State ain't that good either.
Yeah.
But he chose the lesser opponent to play against. So it's a problem the NBA's got. I don't know how you fix it because you can't make them play. And if these guys are willing to walk away from potential, off-season awards based on how many games they play, then that's on them.
Yeah.
But I hate it. It stinks because I was ready. I'll get Knicks Sixers. If I'm awake, maybe I'll catch the first quarter. Let's see what LeBron and the Lakers have. AD's been playing great throughout the entire year. I actually give him his props. And no LeBron James. Yeah. I'm like, the dude ain't hurt. Hasn't played basketball in a week.
Yeah, he put out a cryptid tweet, if you will, with an hourglass, right, not too long ago.
Yeah.
And it made you seem like, man, there's a sense of urgency with this guy. You don't play last night against the Golden State Warriors, and now you're playing against the Spurs. I'm going to call you a liar, because if you want to be out there, you will force yourself to be out there.
And you give me the no back-to-back thing is cool, but playing the Warrior game and not the Spurs.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Guys, here's the thing. When you watch him play tonight, he's not going to be limping around like Isaiah Thomas.
No, he'll be flying up and down the
He's
court.
going to be fine. He's going to play 30 minutes, and he's going to score 30 points.
Yep.
It's like, why don't you just do that last night? This is a real problem for the league because of the broadcast deals, too. You're TNT. They're coming back. You're coming back from the All-Star break. This is a marquee matchup. I plan on staying up late. Willie texted me, told me to go to sleep.
Literally.
I'm still watching the game.
And earlier, we talked about Jacoby made the good point. These games are important because you don't want to be, the 9 seed.
Seeding matters.
You don't, because you saw what happened last year, right? You can get in.
One team
if
gets
you,
hot.
Right. You can get in by losing the first of the play-in games if you're the 7 or 8.
He went to the finals and did it.
Right. If you're the 9 seed, guess what? It's a one game. And you might have a bad game.
You can just run into, De'Aaron Fox can just score 40 points on you. Next thing you know, you're going home.
So, right, and here's the other thing. You got 25 games to go. You're the Lakers. You're 4 games behind both the Kings and the Suns. And by the way, just real quick, editorial note. The fact that the Phoenix Suns are sitting in 7th place, really tied for 7th right now, with the Sacramento Kings is a joke.
Yeah.
And they lost to the Mavericks last night. It is an absolute
dirty
joke.
secret is KD, Steph Curry, and LeBron James are all on the plane right now.
That's right.
They're all on the plane right now. And Josh Giddey's sitting in the 2 spots.
That's not how Adam Silver drew it up. Here's the best part. Unlike the NFL, the NBA ain't scripted. I can tell you that.
That's a fact.
What are the headlines you got?
You're taking us to break.
Oh, we're going to break? Well, you know what? Coming up, the video everybody wants to see. Kevin Durant got called the B word.
Now you're not
Don't pull back down. You dropped it 4 times an hour. Give the people what they want.
He turned into a suit after
Give them what they want.
Keep the same energy.
Whatever you.
7 o'clock is different than 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Is it now?
Oh, now we're college
At
professors. all of a
7
sudden.
o'clock, we might say bitch.
Oh.
At 8 o'clock, we say the B word.
Okay.
Yes.
What do we do at the 9 o'clock?
In any event, that bitch Kevin Durant is coming up. No, this tease, I take that back, KD. You're my guy. Hey, we just found out that we are the #1 downloaded podcast in Philadelphia the last couple days. So appreciate the love, Philly. Awesome. Way to go. It's the Carton Show podcast. Download it every afternoon. We put out the entire show. We put out the segments and a streamlined best of version. So appreciate the love there. We got Jacoby, got Victor Cruz, got Willie Colon. Kansas City Chiefs made a big move yesterday. We talked about Chris Jones. We talked about L'Jarius Sneed. The Kansas City Chiefs signed the punt god.
Punt god.
Now, you may not remember Matt Araiza. He was the best punter coming out of the draft. The Buffalo Bills actually drafted him quite high. And then he was the subject of an ugly sexual assault investigation in which he was completely exonerated. Now, the Buffalo Bills cut him because of the negative attention that was surrounding the very disgusting allegations of rape and other sexual assault at a party, an on-campus party. And then it turned out that he actually wasn't even physically at the home where the alleged assault took place. So he was totally ramrodded, and he has now been fully exonerated. So the question was, still a young kid, only a year removed from where he would have been in the NFL, do you give him a shot? Kansas City, with their punter going into free agency, said, yeah, you do. So that's the very first move that Kansas City made this offseason in their attempt to three-peat. So the punter's now been taken care of, right? But they have other major priorities there, and that starts and ends with Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed. And look, I follow the guys that cover the Chiefs because they'll know better than we will because they're living it and breathing it every minute of every day. And while you have Willie Gay Jr. and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and you see the other guys there that are also free agents, it starts and ends with the top two. Mm-hmm. The thought process in Kansas City is that Snead is a Chief and Chris Jones is not. Now, that's just conjecture, and that's based on financial considerations, but if I made you pick between the two, would you pick Jones or Snead? And I'm going to answer that first. Ooh, and it may shock you. I would take Snead.
Yep.
As much as Chris Jones is a great ball player and maybe the top defensive lineman, certainly one of them, in the sport of football, I think Snead has more of an impact series after series, where the Jones impact is in this big spot, that spot, whereas Snead, I think, plays a bigger role down after down after down.
I'm 100. Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you look at this Chiefs defense, especially this year, Chris Jones jumped off the tape. This without a doubt. But I think the fact that you had McDuffie, Justin Reed, and Ladarius Snead, and what they did in the secondary from disguises and the way Spags was able to use them during pivotal games, it just shows you that this can be a defense that can stay for a long time. They were ranked second in the league for a reason, because Chris Jones get after the quarterback. But you're able to get sacks when they do their job on the back end. So it's about this secondary. It's about Spags. I love Chris Jones, but I would let him walk.
Now, listen, I went against Spags' defense for a full year in the Giants, and one thing he loves to do well is safety blitz.
Yep.
That safety blitz, he disguises it well. He has his guys execute that to perfection, and the only way that you're comfortable having your safeties blitz is because you're playing man-to-man on the outside. And Ladarius Snead was one of the best corners in the league at playing man-to-man, and that's why he's more important than Chris.
Yeah, look, we talk a lot when it comes to defense is about, the classic shutdown corners.
Exactly.
We think we have one in New York now at Sauce Garden. Of course, Darrelle Revis Island was the epitome of the shutdown corner. Jalen Ramsey early in his career kind of had that moniker as a shutdown corner, but they have it. And one of the things, having watched the Super Bowl 7 times now, that sticks in my brain is the fact that they can play man-to-man on defense as well or better than every other team in the league, which is why when you start thinking about the Chiefs and how they need to improve on what they did last year, their offense was not a high-powered 30-point-a-game offense. Why? Well, because, the wide receiver problems and all that, but they didn't have to be. Mm-hmm. Because that defense, that secondary became so damn good, and the strength of their team where we're in a passing league, and it is not easy to throw the ball against Kansas City with any level of continued or replicable success. So to me, again, no disrespect to Chris Jones. He's the best defensive lineman that's going to be available as a free agent this offseason. But I think Snead has a bigger impact on their defense.
I'm disappointed in all three of you.
Okay.
The question is the top priority for the Chiefs offseason, and I think that Snead is important. I think they will bring him back. But I really think that it's a receiver room. I think they need a receiver. And I think one of the reasons you don't bring Chris Jones back is because you need to spend that money to bring in a Mike Evans or a Calvin Ridley or someone else, because they need one of these guys on the team. And I think that's going to be a
potential,
priority.
But you're right.
Yeah, I think that to me is the priority this offseason for the Chiefs, right there.
Yeah, look, of that list, T. Higgins is the big question mark.
Yeah.
Mike Evans is going to be available. Calvin Ridley's only available if Jacksonville decides they don't want to give up that second-round pick, which was part of the deal when they got him from Atlanta. Odell's available. Gabe Davis is available. Pittman, there's some thought that he gets franchised. I don't think that ever happens. I think he becomes our free agent as well. I think they will let McCole Hardman go. I think they will let Richie James go, or you bring him back on a veteran minimum type of contract because he doesn't have a huge role for them. But I'm with Jacoby at 100%. I think Snead stays.
Yep.
I think the difficult walkaway is the Jones walkaway, and I think they have to be first in line to get a prominent wide receiver. And let's be honest, if you're a Calvin Ridley, if you're a Gabe Davis, if you're Odell,
Higgins,
if you're any of those guys that we're talking about, the top 3, 4, 5 wide receivers that may possibly be available, I don't care who else is calling. If I get the phone call from Patrick Mahomes and Brett Veach in Kansas City, just tell me when the flight's picking me up, because I'm going.
I have a question for you two. We didn't play, right? But there's always this thing when you didn't play, you're like, I'll take a little bit less money to play with Patrick Mahomes, right? But oftentimes when I talk to ex-athletes, they're like, no, I want all the money.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I played in Pittsburgh, and I knew a lot of guys who took a hometown discount because this team was competing for Super Bowl year after year, and that means something, right? So at the end of the day, it's up to the comfort level of the ball players. Some guys want the bag. Some guys don't want to be a part of a dumpster fire organization where they have to will themselves to play every Sunday. When you're part of an organization that has a standard and is used to winning, that builds you up to kind of get through a hard season. So you're talking about a Chiefs team that's competing for possibly their third Super Bowl. You do take a little bit off the top because you know in the long run it's going to benefit your career.
And it depends on where you are as an athlete. If I'm Odell, I've already gotten a large chunk of the money. I've gotten my biggest deals that I'm going to get. I'll take a little bit less to join Patrick Mahomes for sure.
Yeah, Odell is in a unique position. Like
Exactly.
Odell Beckham made $15 million last year
For hanging out, just to hang out in Baltimore.
Didn't earn it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
I think we did the math. It's like $1.3 million per catch.
Yeah.
So Odell may not be after the check, and he's not going to get that type of contract
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
That was coming off what was on maybe an MVP Super Bowl, obviously, with the Rams. So I think Odell's in play for sure again. Patrick Mahomes may make people do silly things when it comes to financial decisions. Am I going to the Durant thing now? Yeah? That's what you guys
You've been
want?
teasing it for
I'm getting a
hours.
lot of people on like, go show me the Durant video. So Kevin Durant, by the way, the Phoenix Suns, I think are the 5 seed right now out west. Six seed, pardon me.
Yeah.
Not playing great out there. It hasn't worked out. You know, where's Bradley Beal? In any event, Kevin Durant coming out of the tunnel for pregame layup lines, right? And there's a couple there sitting second row
slander.
on the baseline. And they said something that was objectionable. What did they call Kevin Durant again? What was the word? Biat! There you go. Look at this video. Check this out real quick. Last night, go. Excuse me? What'd you call me? I just want to shake your hand.
I'm trying to hang out.
I host a podcast about sports.
I host a podcast. That's your leader?
I host a podcast about sports. Apparently, it does very well. So here's what happens. They yell bitch.
Yep.
He stops and hears it, comes back, and then he goes into the layup line, whatever, right?
Yep.
And then the building is now going to kick that couple out.
Okay.
Kevin Durant, I got to give him love on this one.
Yep.
To his credit, after being called a bitch and confronting the chubby old white couple that called him that, comes back to them and tells arena security, don't kick them out, let them be. I've never seen that in my life, and I know for a fact Russell Westbrook would have said, kick them out.
Get them out of here.
Get them out of here, and tried to fight them. But he allowed them to stay because they would have kicked him out.
That's interesting.
Right?
I wonder why he did that. I wonder why he kept that. You know, they obviously called him an expletive. He goes over to check it out.
Right.
They try to change their story, shake his hand, whatever. I want those guys out, personally. Like, there's no room in sports for you to call me that, and I just keep you around, and I got to look at you as I'm shooting free throws. You're sitting under the basket, I'm shooting free throws.
Right.
You're still looking at me. I'm still getting a weird energy. It's going to be weird for me the rest of the game. I don't know. I would have still kicked them out.
I hate it. I hate the whole situation. So what they called you to be word? I've heard worse things called in a pickup game in the Bronx. You know what I mean? So like,
fact.
you're Kevin Durant. You're telling me a frumpy-old white lady called you the B word, and that just pissed you off. You're running onto the court about to play the Mavericks. That's all you should be concerned
I think
about.
it's the way that it happened. It's the way that
Yeah,
he's
like,
just
listen,
literally coming out trying to live.
And we talk about the rules all the time.
Yeah.
You know, stay away from my family and stay away from the racial slurs.
Right.
Whatever you want to say out of that, so what?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand what's the giving it that energy.
You have a star NBA player coming to you angry, and your recourse is, I'm just trying to hang out, and then your man is like, I
got a
host a podcast about sports.
Yeah.
Like,
Now-
how is that relevant?
The part of the video we didn't see is that the guy apparently said to Kevin Durant, she's on Ozempic, give her a break. But that's
Yikes.
that's the part we don't have.
Everything's bigger in
Russian
Texas.
I'll tell you the one thing that really did bother me about the video. It's the fact that not a single member of the Phoenix Suns came over to back him up. Because as he's coming out, there's another
They weren't really there.
play. Watch,
Yeah, it was
show
like
it
two
again.
guys. They
weren't
As
really
he's
there.
coming out, watch what happens. There's another member of the Phoenix Suns in front of him, right there,
Like, what?
and he's like, "What's happening? He got
Katie
called
got
a
it.
bitch.
He's like,
All right,
Katie
he can
got
handle
it.
that."
Eubanks is like, I got punched in the face last week. I'm good. I don't need any more conflict before the game.
Yeah, I host a podcast about sports.
I host a podcast about
I mean,
sports.
who
As someone who does host a podcast about sports, it makes us all look bad.
I'm just more mad at Katie. He gave it that energy. Like, just keep go hoop.
Meanwhile, you know how in the NFL, starting next season off in Brazil. You know the Eagles are playing in Brazil. The NBA was like, you know what? We really like this idea of globalizing our sport. And every sport's going to try to do this at some point. You'll build bigger audiences abroad. And I love the fact that Adam Silver is the first commissioner to globalize his sport by allowing the New York Knicks to have a home game in Philly last night.
Oh, yeah.
As the New York Knicks took care of business
Light work.
against the Philadelphia 76ers
Wasn't that
in
light?
Philly last night. And do we have audio of this, guys? We do. So as the clock's ticking down in the fourth quarter, it became Madison Square Garden, the Philly version. Listen how we took over your building, Philadelphia. Play the audio, boys.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Let's go Knicks. Let's go Knicks. Let's go Knicks.
Even the Knicks fans are kind of
Takeover.
Are we doing this? Yeah.
We're doing this here.
We're doing this here. All right, let's do it.
We're going to do a fight after this.
He's like, we're doing it, Jimmy. We're doing it.
I love it.
That's right.
That
We
feels
took
good.
over
That feels-
your building
We own you,
last
Philly.
night in Philadelphia.
Tough week for Philly.
There are police reports
Very
that
tough.
3 men wearing blue and orange are in the hospital now recovering from
Man.
wounds they
You
suffered.
gotta be careful, Philly. You gotta be careful, Philly.
They're
At
throwing
Broad
stuff out for
Madison.
sure.
All right. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate the love, though. Coming up, the Dallas Cowboys are about to have the highest paid player in the history of the league, and they've got a tight end complaining that they're a bunch of softies in that locker room. We'll explain what Ferguson said right after this. Why am I laughing, you might say, right? Well, it's Friday and we're off next week, and I feel very good about that. But also, I feel very good about the new jerseys that Major League Baseball players are going to have to wear. I think it's one of the great changes jerseys have ever gone under. And I love the fact that MLB has a partnership with Grindr. I think it's fantastic that they do that. But for those of you that are unaware of what I'm talking about, the players, when they get new jerseys, are asked to do a photo shoot for their baseball cards and for a team,
Seems
PR,
right.
and all that kind of stuff.
right.
Media day.
So let me just show you an example of one of those.
Oh, man. Yeah, you can't put the beans before the Frank.
Yeah. By the way, he's got a 2-0 count or something there.
Yeah, that's tough.
2 balls and no strikes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jacoby.
That was like a full count.
Got it.
Kids
Got
didn't
it.
get it.
Yeah.
2 balls is another word.
Yeah.
I think I mixed it up. I think I mixed
See,
it up.
it's a 2-0
I
count,
got
2
it.
balls.
Balls
I blame the cameraman. He's in the scope like, all right,
How does
whatever.
this get to us? Like, if you take this picture, how do you then distribute it?
Yeah, well,
really him, just his
thank God they did. That's hot. And then, if that's not enough for you,
Wait,
Look at that.
Do it. I didn't see that one.
let's
That's too much.
if I may, the first thing I thought was, Einhorn is a man.
Yeah.
He's got the greatest case of hemorrhoids I've ever seen.
man.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one before the show.
This one is throwing me
I
off.
didn't see that one before the show.
Because though I appreciate
Look
his
at it
hamstring bulge, it's when you get higher up that kind of throws you
You
off.
said you're off next week. You might be off.
Get it off the screen.
It's still
Oh
there.
my goodness.
I mean,
Yo, just wondering.
Go full screen. Why not?
He's just
I mean,
stretching.
No.
Like,
so the players are concerned about sweating and
Yeah.
rain and spilling. Yo,
Oh, God.
yeah.
man, that's just.
What are we doing?
2 balls, no strikes.
Yep.
Batter up. Anyway, there's not one of me. I know that. Unless there is.
Ah! Yeah, there you go, Craig.
Pose is this?
It's a game of inches. Yeah. Right.
Oh, man.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I guess this week you really are the head of sports media.
All right.
Yo, Victor just came to the dark side.
I hate it here.
Yeah. I like the
dark.
Captain Morgan post.
My gut is that there's going to be some changes to the.
that wasn't your gut, Craig. That was not your gut.
Why haven't you our Larry O'Brien trophy, by the way?
Oh, so I do have to apologize
Oh, my
to Kenny upstairs.
Oh, no.
I totally apologize. We have a guy that works upstairs, does a great job, who
ruined it.
has one of those 3D printers.
Yeah.
He made the Lombardi Trophy, and yesterday he gave me the Larry O'Brien. Is it still called that?
Yes, it is.
Trophy, NBA championship trophy, and I had it down my pants,
Right.
Oh.
So we got mixed up.
and I broke it.
Different trophy. Different trophy.
Yeah.
It's what I do.
I got you.
It's what I do.
Little different trophy.
This is
so-
still sex appeal.
Sorry, not sorry. Hey, let's get to football.
Let's talk about football.
Can we please?
Let's talk about football.
Please.
We start with the Dallas Cowboys on first down. Jake Ferguson, the new tight end for the Cowboys, had a good season, and he spoke about the approach that opposing teams take when they face the Cowboys, and he said the following, and I quote, he said, I always like to think we're the Dallas Cowboys. Every team that's going to play us is going to bring their all every single time. It's a kill or be killed mentality. We've just got to kill them first. Is this unique to the Cowboys, or is this just football?
Yeah, I think it's just football. You guys can speak to it better than we can. It's interesting to me because I try to read between the lines on it. And again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm going to. And that is a guy telling you that there were moments where the other team was more ramped up and prepared than we were. Or they have more of the killer mentality against us. And that means there are games where he felt we came out slow, we came out soft, we didn't try to jump on another team right away. Now, I can't tell you he's talking about the Green Bay playoff game. He might be. Sure. He might be talking about the Cardinal game. Early in the year, we thought, the Cowboys were money good, and we're going to blow the Cardinals out, and lost that game. Mm-hmm. And then people started questioning, whoa, hey, time out. Who are the Dallas Cowboys? But to me, if I'm Mike McCarthy, and I don't think he meant anything by it, and he didn't call out any specific player, I'm concerned about it because maybe I'm unaware of the personality of my team coming out of the locker room for a big game. And yes, when you're the Dallas Cowboys, you're going to play a lot of games on national TV, whether it's the primetime games or even just the 4:25 window on Fox, meaning a lot more eyeballs are on you. The other team knows that also. If I'm a young player trying to make a name for myself, I got a lot more people watching me when I play the Cowboys than when I play, the Jaguars, right? Yeah. So I think what he's saying is a problem. I don't want to overstate it, but I think what he's saying is every team that played against us came out ready to fight, and there were games that we didn't. And that is a problem.
Yeah, I think he's speaking to the intensity of the team. You also got to understand what the hardest thing as a football player to do is match the intensity of your opponent through 4 quarters, right? And so when you watch how this team started, they were front runners for the most part, right? You beat the hell out of the Giants, you beat the hell out of the Jets, and you kind of marched on. The one time you got punched in the mouth was against the Niners, and you got embarrassed.
You wilted, right?
And then you bounced back. Yeah, and then you bounced back after that. So for me, I think he's just understanding the life of being a Dallas Cowboy, just like the life of being a Patriot when Brady was there, or being a Steeler when we had Ben Roethlisberger, or being a Giant when it was with you boys. So different teams warrant your best, and if you don't come out with that same type of intensity, you're going to get embarrassed.
Was there for both of you guys? The thing about Ferguson, I like and I don't like, is that he's a young guy, right? Yep. He hasn't been in the league all that long.
Good player.
Yeah, and a good player, and he was a go-to guy. Really good on third downs for the Dallas Cowboys, and will be a big part of their offense moving forward. Well, but he's also a young guy. There's a part of that I like, because he feels comfortable enough to say it. And a part of that, I kind of want someone else to say it. Do you guys have just top of your mind, was there a guy, like a go-to guy in any of your locker rooms where if there was something off, this was the guy that would step up and say something?
I think for us, it was James Ferrier, our middle linebacker, our captain. He was the guy, when he spoke, you kind of listened, not because of what he was able to do on the field, because he had played a long time. Him and Hines was kind of those guys, even a Joey Porter at times. When those guys spoke, because they had been through so many battles, played in so many big games, and played against high competition, you just kind of whatever they said, you listen.
Who was the talker on the Giants team?
Well, it was 2 guys. One was Brandon Jacobs, mostly from a yelling perspective when he wanted to get us the first down.
He would tell you how bad you were.
Or if it was 3rd and 2 and we were going to 4 receiver sets, he's like, "What are we doing? It's 2 yards." But and if it wasn't him, it was Justin Tuck. Justin Tuck was the calm voice that was like, "All right, guys, we need to get our crap together."
That's interesting because Justin Tuck, for those of you who don't know him, is an understated guy.
Correct.
He's also a VP with Goldman Sachs now, and is in the finance world quite successfully. But he doesn't strike me as a big talker.
He was another one of those guys that when you spoke, he listened. He didn't talk all the time, but when it was time to speak, people opened their ears and they listened.
Because I would have thought Antro Roll would have been.
He was one of those guys as well, but he was coming from a different angle, right? He was in that Brandon Jacobs angle, let's get our crap together kind of thing.
I got you.
But it was that calm, reserved voice that we needed from Justin Tuck at times to really get us on track.
Moving on to second and football, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. They have a star receiver, Justin Jefferson, who does not have a new deal. We all expected it to happen. It did not happen. So, Craig, I ask you, is it inevitable that he'll get a deal done, or are there bigger problems in Minnesota?
I wouldn't say bigger problems. I think a question mark that's got to be answered first is who's their quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think if Kirk Cousins gets a deal done, I'd be shocked if he doesn't. I'm sure he wants to stay there. Why wouldn't they want him back? Because what are your other options if not Kirk Cousins? I think Kirk Cousins signs. Justin Jefferson signs, right after that. Not that he's going to be in the league as long as Kirk Cousins necessarily on the same team, because Kirk's towards the end of his career and Justin's is just getting started. That being said, from everything I read in Minnesota from guys that cover the team who know a lot more than we know, obviously, about what's going on in Minnesota, no cause for concern. The fact that he hasn't gotten the deal done yet, they got to get Kirk Cousins done, and Justin Jefferson will get a significant payday from the Minnesota Vikings. And look, if you're Minnesota, you walked away from Dalvin Cook. Turned out that seems to be the right decision based on what Dalvin was unable to do this past year with the Jets and didn't really get much of an opportunity with the Baltimore Ravens. You do have some young running backs on that team who had some success late in the year, and you're still, I think, a very well-coached team. So you bring Kirk Cousins back. I know Green Bay is on the rise, and Detroit right now is kings of the division. But the Minnesota Vikings went on a run middle of the year last year after starting 0-3, where if Kirk Cousins stays healthy, they're going to the playoffs.
Right, for sure.
I can't say they would have beaten Detroit for the division, but that becomes an 11-win, 10-11-win team last year. So I think you run it back. But part of that is, when is Kirk healthy, and what kind of contract do you give him? If you're Justin Jefferson and they give Kirk Cousins a 1-year deal, are you signing a 5-year, 6-year contract? Or do you play out the string and then decide to take your talents elsewhere?
And what's that number, Craig? Do you think he gets more than Tyreek Hill at $30 million a year, or is he in that?
Yes, I think much like we see with Dak Prescott.
Great graphic.
I think it's going to continue to go up and up and up, and that means he's going to be north of Devontae, north of Tyreek Hill, and I think he has to be.
His name should be on that list.
Yeah, well, eventually it will be. He's still on that rookie contract.
I mean, I was just confused with Justin Jefferson from this standpoint. Like, they had a chance to lock him up before the season. It never happened.
Right.
And I know a lot of it happened to do with the guarantee money. But when they signed Kirk Cousins to become a Viking, they gave him $84 million guarantee, right?
Exactly.
So, like, it can be done. It's just a matter of, to your point, who's going to be the quarterback.
Let me also show you one thing. Put that list back up, guys, if you don't mind. There's a major difference also between Justin Jefferson and the top guys on this list, and it's age. Justin Jefferson's 24 years old. Those guys are 30. Right? So you're talking about guys at the end of their careers who have earned those contracts, obviously. And then you're talking about a kid in his young 20s going into his mid-20s who's not even arguably a top 3 wide receiver coming off an injury year for sure. But it's much like the quarterbacks. Next man up is going to get more. So everyone should thank those guys for kind of setting the table. Really, Steph Diggs set the table before the other guys did, and use those contracts to get more and more. I think Tyreek's deal, if I'm not mistaken, was 4 years, $120. I think I have that right.
Yeah, something like
so
that.
If I'm Justin Jefferson, that's the starting point.
That's the full.
I ain't taking less than that. Right? I'm going to be here in the league for another 10 years. I'm not taking less.
Moving on to...
And just one real quick thing. Remember.
You pointed to me.
I know, it's my fault. I did, and I took the point back. All right, don't forget. Minnesota has walked away from a great wide receiver before.
Diggs.
They had Stephon Diggs, and they decided, you know what? We're going to trade you. So they have been in this position before, and that's how they got Justin Jefferson, actually. But they've been in this position before, so they are not married to really anybody on that team.
Ready?
Go.
Third in football, we move on to Bijan Robinson, the young running back for the Falcons. He set the expectations for next year very high for himself. He said the following, quote, "I want 2,000 yards rushing. I know those are big expectations. I think it's going to be one of those special seasons that Atlanta's been waiting for." Craig, is this too much?
I mean, look, I want a threesome with Pamela Anderson in her 20s and Carton Electra, but I didn't get it. So, hey, he wants 2,000 yards. Great. How about you start with getting 1,000 yards?
Did you just
Which he didn't.
Pamela Anderson and Carmen Electra?
In their 20s.
Well, Craig had his fastball.
Craig never had his fastball. No, here's the deal. He's a great running back, not a good one. And you can't talk about him only in terms of his rushing yards, because he's as good out of the backfield as he is carrying the ball. The thing I don't get about how they used him last year, which is why they, in my opinion, you have a new coach in there, is the fact that the last 3 games of the year, when they're still alive to win the division and get into the postseason and have a playoff game, they relied more on Desmond Ridder than they did on their best player, right? Or one of their best players for sure, in Bijan Robinson, where he averaged like 9-10 carries a game over the last 3 weeks. It made no sense, right? So to me, having 2,000 yards is great to say. You didn't run for 1,000 last year. Very hard to run for 2,000. But Vic said earlier, and I think you're right, if you said that it's a more reasonable goal to go for a dime and a dime, meaning 1,000 running and 1,000 receiving. That's on the table.
That makes sense.
Or some combination of the two to get you to 2,000 yards. Remember, last year, if you add those up, real quick math tells you he ran for 1,400. He had 1,453 yards, or 63 yards, total yards from scrimmage. So he's only 500 yards away, and he should be the focal point of that offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to get more touches, both catching the football and running the football. 2,000 rushing solely, that's going to be tough to get, especially in Atlanta, where they're not the most balanced attack on offense as it is.
Yeah, and by the way, Atlanta doesn't have a quarterback right now either. So they got a bigger question about who their quarterback's going to be than really just about anything else. We got much more coming your way. We've got a problem in Philadelphia, not because I say so, but because I say so. And Fletcher Cox says so also. So for all the yelling and screaming about what I had to say, now there's active players on the Eagle roster backing me up. We'll get into it right after this. All right, welcome back to the Carton Show. Here we got Willie Colon, we got Victor Cruz, of course, my main man, Mr. David Jacoby. Real quick, as you know, there's a lot of fury right now about the brand new Nike uniforms that Major League Baseball players.
Story?
Well, it's
was over.
There's an update to it.
Okay.
There's an update to it. Not only is there a concern that they have new uniforms because they're kind of see-through and not all that great. Apparently, they're also updating the bats and balls.
Oh, gotcha. There you go.
Yeah,
all right.
They're going with smaller bats.
All right. There you go.
Already went through this already.
Yeah, they're going with smaller bats and smaller balls.
It's not like the
Guys
speed
are hiding them in their pants.
The worst part is that it looks like he's peeking at us through.
Yeah.
Whatever you say, Vic.
There's a lot peeking at us. There's a lot peeking
All
at
right,
us.
time now for the
man.
Friday.
Big bag in the back.
Go to what? Hey, Billy, what's up?
All right.
Happy Friday.
Let's turn the page, guys.
Thank you, Vic, for being the adult in the room. Appreciate you. Time now for something we like to call For Real or Fugazi. Thank you, studio audience. I need to hear from you on this one. All right, here we go, Willie Colon.
Step up, Troy.
The Philadelphia Eagles have a culture problem. For real or Fugazi?
How about obviously? For real, like I think Vic hit it right on the head. He's only been here 3 days, and we've talked about them in nauseum because every time we've talked about them, it's either the coach, Jalen Hurts, Fletcher Cox, and I think I said it earlier in this week. It was me, Lane Johnson, at the presser at the end of the year, talking about, hey, this team quit early, right? Like they pay more attention to everything else other than the game itself. So I think it's a lot going on in Philly. And I don't know if it's going to be all solved this offseason. I think one of the interesting things for me on this, Victor, is that, when I came out and said what I said on Tuesday and everyone yelled and screamed and wanted to kill me in Philadelphia, what's interesting is that it's not anonymous sources now. It's not people close to the team. Mm-hmm. You have now, as you look back on it, you have named players played on the team this year. Some will be back.
With large
some
roles,
may not be back.
Like real roles.
Who are now saying, we do have a problem. Yeah. So I feel even better about what I said on Tuesday because you have guys that played for them saying, we were absolutely divisive. We have leaks. We have issues in the locker room. It's player-to-player problems, player and coaches problems. And Fletcher Cox is one of the most respected voices in that locker room for the last decade, right?
Correct.
And when Fletcher Cox comes out and says, in this case, we have a problem with our quarterback, you have a problem with your quarterback.
Yeah, I agree, and it just echoes everything that you've been saying and we've all been saying all week long. We've literally been on the show, and as you've gotten through your soliloquies about the Eagles, we've gotten real live tweets about these things from A.J. Brown and the media and other things that are happening, and Fletcher Cox today. So it's a real dumpster fire over there right now.
Yep.
And I don't see an area where it gets fixed anytime soon.
And that's the point. And they could be in denial all they want and threaten to muzzle people all they want. The reality is that every player that's been asked about it has said, we got problems.
Yeah.
So you can be mad at me all you want. Maybe be mad at Nick Sirianni for allowing those problems to foster and fester over the course of the last 2 months of this past year. Remember, the Eagles were 10-1. They were 10-1, And when San Francisco went through that little 3-game losing streak, the Eagles had the number 1 seed.
So I do want to talk about that 10-1 thing. We mention that all the time.
Yeah.
When you knowing what we know now, you look back. Like, remember week 1 against the Patriots, Mac Jones had the ball and they could have scored. And you remember they were undefeated and Jason Kelce was like, we're still not right on his own podcast.
Yep.
And you look back, that loss to the Jets. Now, knowing what we know now, you look back at the season. Yes, they were 10-1, but they were still kind of like a shaky 10-1.
It wasn't a real 10-1.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a dysfunctional mess, and I like every bit of it. All right, number 2, Saquon Barkley has played his last down as a New York Giant. For real or Fugazi?
This is for real. Yeah, Saquon's gone, man. And I talked about this week 3 teams that I think would be best suited.
Where's that, Willie?
The Chargers, you have the Browns, and I also like the Texans. The bottom line, Saquon has had a mediocre career here in Giants. I know a lot of things haven't worked out because he's an injury-prone back, but he still tote the rock and he still catch the ball. So head west. Go play for Jim Harbaugh and see what your career looks like.
Texans watching their running back leave. The Cleveland Browns probably going to cut Nick Chubb. And obviously Austin Eckler no longer with the Chargers. So every one of those teams does have an opening at running back.
Saquon also just followed the Houston Texans on Instagram.
Oh!
If that means anything. That means anything. As much as this pains me, I think it's for real. I think he's played his last game as a Giant. I think he's going to go see greater pastures, go be on a team that can contend for a Super Bowl, which he's earned, in my opinion. He's deserved to be on a team that can contend. So go out west with the Chargers, who we've spoken about, or Houston, which also is a great fit.
I think Saquon's a very, very smart man. And I think he's playing the game.
Yeah.
And I think everyone knows that when a player, follows a team or unfollows a team, we saw that this past week already, right? With Justin Fields unfollowing the Chicago Bears, it became a national news story. I don't know if Saquon's going to Houston or not. He obviously, the New York Giants still have to make a decision on him, and nothing can really happen until March 11th in that regard anyway, but that is not stupid.
No.
It is not stupid.
Right.
It's also telling the other teams that may want him, if you want him, you better pick up the phone and call, get ready at offer ready, because he's already following the Texans. Now, I would not be surprised if Saquon, because he is a very smart guy, and I'm sure has great representation, also starts following the Chargers, the Browns, the Cowboys, the Eagles. I would like to see him, frankly, play for the Eagles or the Cowboys.
Not in the division.
Because I love the theater of that. And I'm not a Giants fan.
Yeah.
So watching him come back to MetLife Stadium in a Dallas uniform, and as much as I don't like Philly, in an Eagle uniform to play your Giants, I would love that.
I just had an awake nightmare about that now, because that is not something you want to see. I know Mr. Mara doesn't want to see that. The Tishers do not want to see him coming into the stadium or even going there twice a year to go see Saquon on the other side of the field.
Well, it's simple. All you got to do is give him a 2-year contract for $24 million, guarantee 15 of it, and he's a Giant. You're choosing to allow him to walk out the door.
Sure.
I mean, he's not walking out because he wants to. You're forcing him out the door. All right, next one, real quick. Here we go. Justin Herbert is overrated. For real or Fugazi?
I'm going to say Fugazi. Listen, I like Justin Herbert. I think, he threw for 3,000 yards this year. Obviously, he was banged up. You can see the hand right there. But he's a tough kid, man. He's been dealing with a lot. Shaky offensive line. You're talking about a defense that has failed him multiple times, but he's a hell of a quarterback. He doesn't scramble a lot, but when he does, he makes plays with his legs. So you get him a running back, get him a new head coach, watch what he can do in division to see what happens. But they got to revamp that defense.
He's the best quarterback in the league that hasn't won a playoff game. I don't think he's overrated one bit.
I mean, the arm talent is there. He's put that on display year in and year out. I think he needs help, and he needs a running game that's consistent, a running game that can create balance on this offense. He can't throw the ball 35 times a game, 40 times a game anymore. That's just not a design for him to win. We've seen it already. He's going to have a bunch of yards, but it's not going to equate to winning. So they have to figure out how to create a balanced attack around him in order to win.
Well, you get one of those dozen running backs, you get Jim Harbaugh on the sideline, all of a sudden the Chargers are for real.
Yeah.
And I think they're the only team that can push Kansas City for that division title. I don't think the Broncos can, and with all due respect to Antonio Pierce, I don't think the Raiders can either. Brock Purdy is a top 5 quarterback. For real or Fugazi?
The machine is for real. How can you doubt this man? NFC Championship, Super Bowl, Valley, he didn't win it, but he was damn good this year. And I think he's going to have a hell of a year next year, especially under this system. And he's going to be fighting for a payday, so I see him kind of motivated, ready to go.
As long as Shanahan is there calling those plays and he's the system quarterback that gets it done, not just a system quarterback. He's a guy that's in a system getting it done. He'll be back in contention.
Yeah, look, I've said it all year long. I thought he should have been in the MVP conversation, rightfully so. And the nonsense of, well, he's a product of the town around him. Every good quarterback is, right? If you don't have talent around you, you're not going to be an MVP candidate or win a Super Bowl. They've got some fringe players that they got to make decisions on this year. Their stars are all coming back, other than Chase Young, but he is absolutely a top 5 quarterback. And I would say now, and you could argue this, between Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott, he's the best quarterback in the NFC. You were saying?
Okay. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, all better than Brock Purdy.
I would argue that with you, and I would put him ahead of Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow right now in the moment. But listen, you have a good list, but you can't put Dak ahead of him. You just can't do that.
No way.
I almost think you lose credibility putting Dak Prescott.
I lost credibility a long time ago. Yeah, I don't have any left.
No, Dak's a top 10 quarterback, so we're mincing words there. But he ain't fifth, I can tell you that. He's going to be paid like he's number 1. That's coming up soon. All right, real quick. A Chiefs three-peat would make Patrick Mahomes the GOAT. For real or Fugazi?
That's a good one,
I would
Craig.
say Fugazi. I get it. 3 in a row. Nobody's ever done it. But you talk about the GOAT. There's only one man as we stand, and that is Tom Brady. I think he has to win multiple Super Bowls. First of all, he has to get past Bradshaw, right? You talk about Bradshaw has 4, on and on. But three-peat, yeah, it's a rare air. But I wouldn't consider him the GOAT.
I say Fugazi as well, only because he already is the GOAT. Like the thing.
What?
It's already the GOAT.
Great
for
take,
me, guys.
Vic.
He's already the GOAT for me. The things that he's done out there, the way he's putting the team on his back, the way, all the accolades, the guy's he only knows AFC Championship games. That's all he's done since he's been in the league. Like, he's doing things that we haven't seen at a younger age that a lot of these guys are at right now, and the ceiling is just going up.
You guys also have to remember that when you talk to a guy who played for the New York Giants, when he played for them, they don't think of Tom Brady as the GOAT. Tom Brady couldn't beat that.
Bug on the windshield.
Got him out of the way.
Bug on the windshield of the Giants machine.
For real or Fugazi, one more here. It says that Victor Cruz can only dance the salsa. He's a one-trick pony dance-wise. For real or Fugazi?
I'm going to say for real. Let's see Cruz twerk.
In a baseball uniform.
Right, in a baseball uniform, right.
How much time is left on the shot?
Let's hit the speed bag.
I'm gonna request that he not twerk. All right, we got to take one more break here. When we continue on, though, we got some situation cooking in Philly, including active players saying that Jalen Hurts is the problem in Philadelphia. We'll go down that road one more time. And Les Sauce is doing some more recruiting after this.
Good morning. Welcome to the Show. We have your early morning headlines. We start with the New York Jets. That is Sauce Gardner, their star cornerback, and he is taking his Twitter fingers out, and he's recruiting receivers to the Jets.
Working.
Here's what he had to say. I'm going to sign Calvin Ridley. If that don't work, I'm signing Mike Evans. I can't go wrong with either of them. I feel like T. Higgins won't be available for me to sign him.
Love it.
And he signs off with Les Sauce.
Les Sauce. Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, I hope he's actually picked up the phone and called these guys, who I'm sure he has some level of relationship with, to do the heavy recruiting so that when these guys do become available, the New York Jets already know that they're willing to come to New York. But I think I want to see more of this. I think it's great. Like, we talk about the fraternity of players, but how often do players take advantage of those relationships? Like Devontae Adams went to Vegas because Derek Carr was there, and it's his best friend from college.
Exactly.
So he got recruited to go there, and then, of course, he got screwed because Carr's gone, right? So the fact that Les Sauce is actively doing the GM's job here and trying to convince guys that, by the way, might need a little convincing to why would I ever want to play for the New York Jets. Having a young stud who's just got through his second year in football carries some weight, I would think, more so than a GM calling your agent up. Because if I'm a player, tell me what it's like there.
Sure.
What's the culture like? What's the locker room like? How the facilities? What's Aaron really like? All that kind of stuff. So I think it's great. And now my fingers are crossed. I'll take either one of those guys. Calvin Ridley had a really good first year back from the suspension for gambling with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. And the only reason they would let him go is if they keep him they have to give Atlanta their second-round draft pick. So that's a decision they have to make regarding Calvin Ridley. Mike Evans, of course, couldn't get a deal done in Tampa, which is mind-boggling that they're going to let him walk out the door. But, LaSauce is right. I'll take either one of those guys. And I'll do you one step more.
What's that?
The Jets tried to trade for Devontae Adams last offseason, and it just didn't get done for a variety of reasons. I would try again. Because if I can reunite Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers, now you have to take this offense. If you're not taking it seriously now because he's 40 years old or because we have a one-trick pony offense passing with only Garrett Wilson, if I put a Devontae Adams on this field, different ballgame. The rub, of course, there is if I'm Antonio Pierce, I ain't trading him by this player.
Best guy.
So it'll be interesting what happens, but the New York Jets clearly are going to acquire a top-level wide receiver, and they need to.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the fact that LaSauce is doing this. Listen, every player, no matter who you play, you're a walking, breathing ambassador of your team, right? And if you're the New York Jets, one of the things that plague your team is the media. And the only person you can have a conversation with are guys who are in the locker room dealing with the media every day. And so if I want to be a part of New York Jets and validate Aaron Rodgers and everything, one of the things I can say, hey, how bad is this media market? Can I survive here or can I not? So those are the questions you have to answer. But number two is the Jets have to figure out from an offensive line standpoint who's going to be that starting five, because you're losing Vera Tucker's coming off an injury. Beckton's on the is in free agency right now. And if you got to keep Aaron Rodgers upright, because God forbid this man gets hurt again.
It's a wrap.
It's over.
Now, they will absolutely have a credible veteran backup quarterback this year, which they didn't last year. Zach Wilson will not be on the Jet roster this year, in my opinion. And the big question, of course, not to get too in the weeds on the New York Jets, because all you're saying enough, move on from the Jets. We get it. You're a Jet fan. Aaron Rodgers, we get it, all that stuff. Alan Lazard needs to play football. He's a liability for them right now based on production, and you can't get rid of him because he's like a $20 million dead cap hit. So he does come back, and maybe with Aaron behind center, Alan Lazard becomes the receiver we were hoping for.
You got to think with Aaron Rodgers healthy again that Alan Lazard picks up his level of play and is a different type of guy, especially with.
But remember this: healthy. New Orleans, February of 2025. You're going to see Brock Purdy against Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl.
Book it.
There you go. There you go. If you want to take the field, go ahead. You just donate your money to charity.
Get out of here.
Moving on from the New York Jets to the Philadelphia Eagles.
The Eagles.
What a week it has been for the Philadelphia Eagles. We have more news about the absolute chaos that is the Philadelphia Eagles right now. The latest is Fletcher Cox is saying that it was Jalen Hurts' demeanor that was impacting the team negatively. Craig, this has been going on all week. You've got 12 more minutes to discuss the problems with the Eagles.
I want to say something nice about the Eagles first. Those Kelly Green jerseys are fire. They're awesome.
Not bad.
Love every bit of those jerseys. Now let's get to the dysfunction.
Okay.
Because I told you on Tuesday that there's a major problem in this locker room amongst the guys. I never said what the problem was, and apparently there's multiple problems. And for everyone that attacked me and put me down and told me I was dead wrong, or that I'm a National Enquirer level reporter, or I exaggerated everything, isn't it interesting now that 3 days later, active players on the roster have come out publicly acknowledging that there was major dysfunction, which is what I said, in the locker room amongst the guys. Whoever would have thought, though, that dysfunction centered around the guy who got the bag. Number one, over Victor's shoulder right there, Jalen Hurts. Fletcher Cox is retiring, all right? But Fletcher Cox, as one of the elder statesmen of the Eagles this past year, is one of the most respected voices in that locker room. He came out and said that Jalen Hurts' demeanor was a problem and called him out for it, by the way, in front of the rest of the team, as the story now goes. So here's my question. How do you exaggerate a story when one of the best players and most respected voices on a franchise called out the franchise quarterback multiple times in front of the other guys? I call that the textbook definition of dysfunction. And if you want to call it a culture problem, fine, call it a culture problem. But there can be no more denials from the Eagles, from their fan base, or from their shills who report on the sideline during games for them that there is a major problem amongst the guys, which is what I said on Tuesday, and now people are confirming it who play football for the Eagles. Don't listen to the mouthpieces of the Eagles. Listen to the players. If the players came out and said, the bald guy on FS1 is dead wrong, we're the best locker room in football, I'll take my L. But they went the other way.
Yeah.
Some of them put their name to it. Some guys haven't put their name on it. But there's considerable dysfunction and problems between the guys. Now, whoever would have thought that that problem would be against Jalen Hurts?
Yeah.
Because the Jalen Hurts demeanor, that quiet, calm, stoic personality, seemed to play very well when they were going to a Super Bowl the year before.
All fine
and
then.
he had a great Super Bowl, other than the fumble, in the loss to Kansas City. But when you start losing games and your offense isn't clicking on all cylinders and your star wide receivers want more and more and more, and the fan base is saying, we win games when we hand the ball off to DeAndre Swift, why aren't we handing the ball off anymore? And your quarterback sits on the sideline like this every single time they go 3 and out or turn the ball over. And then the other dudes are like, well, where's our leader? Where's our quarterback? It's a problem. You can't deny that there is a problem in Philadelphia. The question now is, does Vic Fangio fix that problem on defense?
Has to.
Does Kellen Moore now fix that problem on offense? And as a reporter said to Nick Sirianni
What do you
a
do?
couple weeks ago, what do you do?
What do you do?
Right.
Because Nick Sirianni is a part of this problem as well. Don't forget the story that came out from a guy who's covered the Eagles for the better part of 20 years, that not having DeSandro standing next to Nick Sirianni made him an uncontrollable, immature douche.
Say it again, Craig. That part we can't just breeze over.
So the report from Derek Gunn, who covers the Eagles for 20 years in Philadelphia, is that Nick Sirianni is an immature, out-of-control douche. And when Dom DeSandro wasn't there to keep him in check, he created problems on the sideline. We've all seen the videos of it, arguing with other coaches, arguing with players, and he lost total control of his team. Yeah. So again, if you need to use me as the bad guy because you don't like me or you're upset that I left you back in 1997 for less talented talk show hosts who bored you for the next 30 years, I'm sorry. Use me as your scapegoat. I'm fine with it. I'm good with it. I got no problem with it. The reality is this. You can't deny that what I said was accurate. You can't deny that I'm right. And you just have a tough time handling it because I'm the guy that told you the facts of what was happening in Philadelphia, and they have a real problem going forward.
Yeah, from an X and O standpoint, you're watching a regression of Jalen Hurts, right? He threw more interceptions than he did last year. He threw 9 more, if you will. Turned over the ball as a team was total of 20. That's the one right there. And he rushed for lesser yards. But overall, the second half of the season, he didn't play well, right? And I think the way they ended the season, 32-9 loss, and against Tampa Bay.
Well, let me stop you there. It's even before the Tampa Bay loss. It's when we sat here and said the final 3 weeks of the season.
Last month of the season.
That's the get good week 3
Giants,
weeks.
Yeah.
Cardinals, Giants.
Yeah, I mean, they almost lost to the Giants the first time. The Giants blew them out the second time they played.
Yeah.
The Cardinals beat them, and the Drew Lock game against Seattle, where they had the lead late, and then Drew Lock goes 92 yards down the field and beats them. Like, it was a mess, and it all came to a head in literally a 4-week span at the end of the season.
And it's interesting because when you speak on the culture of the team, it directly correlates with Nick Sirianni. Like, it directly correlates on his helm and what he's talking about with his team, how he's getting those guys prepared, how he's handling situations that happen within the team. If you have your pulse on your football team, you know exactly the things that are going wrong, and you're addressing them head on, and you're tackling those issues so you can overcome them, so you can go on this run that you want to go on as a team and fix the wrongs going into the playoffs.
The other story that Derek Gunn put out there, which has not gotten the same level of attention because I'm not the one who said it, was the fact that once he got the big contract, the guaranteed money, the $200+ million contract, off of that one, to be fair, really great year in which they went to the Super Bowl, the notion is that he changed. He became a different guy. And all the pressure that came with the money and being the face of this franchise got to him in some manner. Now, Derek didn't elaborate on exactly what he meant by that, but the notion is that he had a tough time handling whether it's the newfound money.
Chicken circuit is what
or whatever it might be. So that's something that's got to be explored now, too. Listen, money changes people.
Yeah.
or money reveals who you really are.
Yep.
You can pick it either way you want. And by all accounts, he seems like a good guy. He's never changed how he acts on the sideline, win or lose. So I can't say that's a problem because it wasn't a problem 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl. But now it's like the buzzards are circling. And when a guy like Fletcher Cox comes out and says, look, he's a problem for this team. Now, Fletcher's not going to be a part of that team going forward. I think he's retiring now and had this illustrious career. It doesn't mean that, the poop is still there.
Yeah.
He just walked away from it.
But Jalen Hurts was also the guy that stood up and pressed and said this team has a commitment problem.
Correct.
Right? And that was a real thing. That was the thing that broke headlines because here's a team that was 10-1, and everybody's like, oh, the Eagles are going back. Damn what you say. But then we saw after that Niner game where they just pretty much, spiraled downhill after that. I think the commitment problem starts with every guy in that locker room. Like, who's all in and who's not. Absolutely. And for your starting quarterback to say that, that's just a beacon of light to show, like, hey, man, we have a legit problem. Guys are resting on the laurels of what happened last year. This is a whole new year.
And I think that's part of it. When you go to the Super Bowl and you're 10-1 and you haven't played great football and getting to 10-1, some guys change their work ethics too, which is why you have so much respect for Kansas City, even though they went through kind of the doldrums throughout the regular season. When it counted the most, they stepped up and they played.
Yeah.
The problem in Philadelphia might be not just that he changed a little bit and couldn't handle a lot of the pressure that came with the big money and all that stuff and becoming this national star at quarterback in the NFL. Part of it might also be he looked around the room and he's like, dudes aren't working out the way they used to. Guys aren't focused as much as they used to. Coaching staff might have gotten a little lazy.
A lot more
Remember,
complaining.
Teams that don't have dysfunction don't fire both coordinators and consider firing their head coach at the end of a season in which they made the playoffs. The Eagles did. They went to the playoffs. Obviously, they get blown out 32-9 to Tampa Bay and fired every coordinator and brought their coach in for a meeting where I thought he was going in like Joe Pesci and Goodfellas and wasn't going to come out. And yet he survived it. But if I'm Jeff Lurie, I have to be saying to myself at some level, have I made a grave mistake in bringing Nick Sirianni back considering all the nonsense that's being said about my team?
Yeah, I mean, listen, everything that we've talked about is not going to be fixed in the offseason. Like, the draft is not going to fix this, right? Like, you're talking about two new defensive coordinator and a new offensive coordinator. They need their time to kind of implement what they want to do within this team. The thing that has to change for the Philadelphia Eagles is who are the leaks, who is Jalen Hurts, and where do you go moving forward into the new season? Because right now, nobody's afraid of the Eagles. If anything, they're kind of wishing the Eagles continue to suck. Especially for the Cowboys.
You got to address these issues head on if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, because here's the thing too: you're going to go into the draft, you're going to bring in new talent, new players, and you can't bring in new younger players into this dumpster fire that's going on in this locker room, because it's only going to poison them going into this thing as well. So you got to figure out what's going on within this locker room, tackle it head on, and Jalen Hurts has to change. I don't need him to be the rah-rah guy. We don't want him to be out of character, but he has to put a little bit more onus on his football team and put his arm around those guys a little bit more and say, hey, we're coming to work out with me this year.
By the way, I'll give you the one,
do all of those type of things.
The one spot where he had an opportunity to change the kind of dynamic of who he is. When you're at a practice and you're allowing the media to be covering your practice with cameras, which is usually the first 5 or 10 minutes, and the media's got to roll out. And with the media there, they embarrassed Jalen Hurts by showing him falling to the ground so he can learn how not to fumble. That's the moment where you go, get the F out, get the F out. I ain't getting embarrassed like that. And they embarrassed him in front of the media.
There's so many. We've covered just a litany of things that were weird and concerning about the Eagles season. But this one from Fletcher Cox to me is one of the most, because he has the option to not say this.
Correct.
Right? And he can not say it.
Yep.
And he's also
Especially
not
if
on
you're
the team.
retiring.
So this is intentional from him. He's intentionally putting this out there to change Jalen Hurts.
Real quick, next week, we're very happy to announce the first ever football extravaganza that we're going to bring to you every single day next week. You're going to get the football extravaganza. Before we rock out here for the weekend, one of my favorite parts of Jeopardy is when they ask sports questions, and these brainiacs have no idea how to answer sports questions. So yesterday on Jeopardy, the question was, 40 years ago, this American athlete was a rock star at the Summer Games, okay? And they showed a picture of an Olympic athlete. And the guy pushes the button, and the guy goes, Scott Hamilton, one of the great, obviously, figure skaters of his day. Unfortunately, The person said Mary Lou Retton.
Oh boy.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's a tough. Sorry, Scott.
man.
Sorry, Mary Lou. That's a tough one to get.
Yeah, that's a
to get
tough
wrong.
shake.
Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week with the football extravaganza.